Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Here's the 3-2. Line drive hit to deep left center field, way back. This could go. It's gone. The Palatine Pounder comes through, and the Cubs take the lead. A solo shot the other way. 3-2, Cubs over the Mets.
2 balls and a strike on Waters. The pitch. Fastball hit high in the air, deep to right field. Verdugo's back onto the track at the fence. It's out of here. Drew Waters hits a 2-run homer at Fenway Park. And the Royals extend their lead. It's 3-0 in the top of the 4th inning.
Here's a swing and a drive. This is hit deep right center field. Friedel's on the run. On the warning track. Leaps. He can't get it. Jorge Soler has given the Marlins a 3-2 lead here in the top of the 7th inning. He's 3 for 3 out of the leadoff spot here tonight.
Now the payoff. Swung on, there it goes. Oh, it's hit high. It is far. It is gone. Aaron Judge, he hit one about as high as he hit it far. A Judgian blast. Oh, baby, was it ever. Well, it's Judgment Day. And all rise. Here comes the Judge as he homers to deep left and the Yankees lead 7-1.
Just understanding the standard, you know, as an offensive lineman, as a defensive lineman, right? You take care of the line of scrimmage. A lot of games are won. That, you know, people talk about that all the time, but just understand the standard, right? When you step on the field, our job is to help the whole team improve, right? When we do our jobs, 21 other guys get to improve.
Hey, good morning. We are back live from the Pinnacle Bank Championship. The club over at Indian Creek. He's Ravi Lulla. I'm Andrew Rogers. Happy to have you with us on Coffee and Cream this morning here on Hail Varsity Radio, 590 ESPN Radio in town. We're live on Twitter, live on YouTube. You can get involved in the comment section of the YouTube page, or you can give us a call, 888-638-4876. Shane back at headquarters at the H&H Chevrolet stage, so he will take your calls there. Well, good morning to you, Shane. Where's he at?
I'm right here. Good morning.
There he is.
How are you?
Good. How are you, man?
Good. Thank you.
Great, relaxing Tuesday night in the Rogers household.
Yeah.
How about the Lulla household for you?
Yeah.
What'd you do yesterday, Robbie, after the show?
Well, I went to my day job, so I worked.
I forgot you do something else.
So I worked, and then after work, didn't do anything, just hung out at
What's your day job again?
I work in the financial sector. I investigate.
That sounds like, make sure you don't say that slowly.
I investigate fraud.
Wow. So, all right. So I should not tell you what I've been up to.
No, probably not.
Okay. So you do your day job. What is that like hourly? Like you go there whenever you want and then you leave?
So I work from home.
Okay.
So, kind of as long as I get my work done, it's pretty flexible. But no, yeah, just went home, worked a little bit, and then I just hang out with my dogs all day while I'm working. So it's always pretty chill around the Lulla household.
That's not too shabby.
Yeah.
Yesterday I left the golf course. I went to one of your local hotspots. At least your everyday hotspot. And then I snagged a quick bite to eat and went to the grocery store because I needed to get some Pam, not pan.
Are you saying Pam or
I'm saying Pam
with an M?
With an M. But I think
I can shed some light on this whole pan situation here.
So I go to the store to get that because I'm gonna make fried chicken for the first time.
Okay,
very first time. But I'm using the air fryer because I didn't want to deep fry it, or deal with
the oil and
splash. Yeah, like it'll splash up on you, and then all of a sudden you'll have marks on your arms. Like I feel like I have a little white spot on my arm. I don't know what that's from, but I was putting everything together, and I'm like, am I doing this right? Because I had so much flour. So in a bowl there were 3 cups of flour for 5 or 6 drumsticks.
Okay.
Like, this seems like way too much.
That seems aggressive. That seems high.
And you know what? I just kept going with the recipe. I found it online. probably should have asked somebody that knew a lot more than me, but I was like, no, I'm gonna attack it on my own. Well, I made it in the air fryer, but my air fryer is so small you can only fit 2 chicken drumsticks in there at one time. So it took me 2.5 hours to make 6 of them because it's 30 minutes each set. Well, does that math add up? No, it's like an hour and a half.
Okay, there you go.
But still,
prep time. And
yeah.
stuff,
Oh, yeah. By the time it was done, because I marinated it in buttermilk.
Okay.
Then I seasoned it all up.
Okay.
Kept it non-spicy for the fiance.
Okay.
Turned out okay. I bet. Here, you know what?
What would you do different next time? What would you do different?
Less flour.
Less flour.
Oh
okay.
my gosh! I threw away so much of that flour. I'm like, what in the?
It's ridiculous.
So the breading didn't stay all the way on in parts.
So that's tough.
I need to figure out how to keep that, but it tasted fine.
Well, that's
and then bacon mac, some mashed potatoes.
You're never gonna get me mad about bacon mac. I'm always on board for that.
Nope, all of that was in the microwave. But yeah, I made this meal, and I normally after I make food, I feel like you did it,
accomplished.
Like, yeah, you really did something here. This time I was like, gosh, the cleanup sucked. The prep kind of sucked.
This is why I don't
food
cook.
Wasn't all the way there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I'm gonna attack it again though, because I'm a perfectionist. That's my personality. I'm gonna want to make sure I can nail it, but I know I didn't. So I'm gonna have to reach out to some people that know more than me.
Yeah, that's why I don't cook. It's not worth it. Like the prep, the time, the taste is usually not as good because I'm not good at cooking, right? So
the only way to get good though is to do it.
Yeah, or you just go out to eat and you don't
and you find somebody that is good at cooking.
Well, yeah. So my wife is a professional chef, so that's worth mentioning here.
Humble
brag. To be fair, chefs don't cook at home, like ever. I've never met a chef that cooks when they get home because once they are done, they are.
Does she just bring some food home for you?
Yeah, so she brings treats occasionally because she's a pastry chef now. She used to do savory stuff as well, but she does pastries now. So she'll bring some treats home and stuff, which is good, but it's not like a meal, right? So yeah, I go out to eat a lot. And,
but you can do that and afford to do that because you don't have kids.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I do spend an inordinate amount of money on dog food and
which is fine.
Everything.
That lasts like months.
Not when you've got 4 big ones.
Oh, you have 4 dogs. Never mind.
I have 4 dogs that are 70 pounds or more each. So I go through about $600 worth of dog food a month.
That's a lot, man.
It is. It's aggressive.
I don't even go through $70 of dog food for my 60-pound black lab.
Yeah.
Because she only eats a cup a day.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm sorry, 2 cups a day, but you split it up.
Yeah. So one of ours is pretty young. He's like 2 or 3, so he still eats a lot. And then you just have the 4, and we buy like the fancy dog
$600. Holy cow.
Yeah. So it's aggressive. Plus we have one that's like real picky, so you have to get like wet dog food to put on top of the dry dog food. Because
why don't you just put water on the dog food?
He won't eat it.
Really?
Oh yeah, he's so picky. Unbelievably picky. And if you get
he's like the kid that you always threaten to like leave. Like, no, don't make me trade you in for a better product.
No, I love him. He's the best, but he is the finickiest eater. Even if you get the wrong wet dog food, like right now, and sometimes he changes his mind. So right now we're on a chicken and venison wet food to put on top of his like.
That sounds so gross.
Oh, I mean, it's dog food. None of it's gonna be good.
Yeah, but it just sounds gross when you say wet food.
But I got chicken and beef on accident one time. Would not eat it.
Really?
Would not. He was just like, no, this is wrong. And I was like, oh, my bad, bud.
Yeah. See, Molly isn't picky. I thought she was picky before, but I think she was just getting too much food. So when we took food away, then she became hungry throughout the day. Well, actually, we used to just feed her once a day.
Yeah.
So it was 2 cups at 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Well, then we realized that because she suffers from seizures.
Oh, sure.
Then we realized that her glucose levels were like really plummeting throughout most of the day, and then would spike a ton
after
at 6 o'clock, and then start to level out again until it spikes a ton. And so we were wondering, like, gosh, she's on medication. She shouldn't be having seizures. Well, then she did have another seizure. And so we tried like a bunch of different ways to balance out her eating, and thank goodness nothing's happened since. But until you kind of do something, until you learn something, you never really know, right? Because everybody learns by failure. I mean, we hear it with fall camp. I feel like somebody says that once a day. Like, oh, until you fail, you're not going to be successful. You have to earn, whatever it is. But in this case, it's just until I actually fail at something, I won't know it. Like, I can read something, but I don't digest it like I do if I fail in something.
The lesson sticks a little bit better there. So my dogs used to just graze all day. I just have the food out and they eat
cows.
They would just eat whenever they felt like. But
how does one not eat the other's dog food?
Well, it was like communal, so everybody just had enough and they were eating. But one of them was getting a little chunky, so we had to put him on a diet. So we had to schedule the eating for everybody else, and the other dogs were not super thrilled about that, but we figured it out.
Communal food.
Yeah, we just because they have their own room and everything, so they just kind of have their own space and they get their food. It's like you do with water. They don't like fight over the water. If they always know food's going to be there. They don't really get territorial over it, because it's just like, oh, that's just a thing that's always here. It's not a precious resource, right? So they're all just like cool, and they just kind of nibble when they're hungry, and not anymore though, because had to put Shadow on a diet. So,
damn it, Shadow. Okay, so did you happen, because we talked about yesterday in the Sports Six Pack? I go, I can't wait to go home and watch this. Really couldn't wait to go home and watch Suits, and I did watch Suits last night.
Okay,
but something else I watched was the first episode of The Look N.
Yeah.
So Nebraska football's newest 30-minute television series. I'm assuming they're all going to be about 30 minutes long.
I would guess, yeah.
When you were watching it, did you think, okay, all right, you tell me first, how did you think everything, like, what did it remind you of? The way that it was filmed, the way that the people were portrayed in this little episode, like, did it remind you of any, like, sort of show, like the same idea?
It kind of reminded me of those, like, all the mockumentary shows, like The Office and Parks and Rec and things like that, where it's like the people know they're being followed, but they don't really always acknowledge it. And I think Isaac Gifford maybe said something, but he's like, yeah, I saw the first episode and I realized there was a camera on me a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, it was Sanford.
Oh,
yesterday.
Phelan Sanford. Yeah. And so that's kind of the vibe I got, was one of those.
So it's funny you say that,
like,
because
mockumentary shows. Yeah.
I thought instantly, this is just like The Office.
Yeah.
The way the camera's moving.
Yeah.
The variety of shots that are being used. The different so-called
it's like a single camera. Yeah.
Right. The single camera view. But it was more than just The Office for me. It also reminded me of Project X.
Okay.
Do you remember how that film was put together?
I don't think I've seen Project X.
So it was basically some guy walking around with a camcorder.
Yeah.
And
which is what this is.
And a lot of points of those in those scenes. And then there was another movie, I think it was called The Visit, where like two kids go visit their grandparents, but it ends up not being their grandparents.
Okay.
Same type of idea. They're on this little, I don't know, camcorder. And so I'm watching this and I'm like, why am I so entertained? Like, what about this makes me so entertained right now? And I think it's because the way it was filmed drew my interest, because it was like something else I like.
Sure.
So I like watching The Office. Yeah. I liked Parks and Rec.
It felt familiar.
Yes. And so when I'm watching it, though, it didn't strike me as, hey, I'm watching a documentary. It struck me as if I was watching a TV show or a movie. And I think that was just so well put together, because even if I'm not a sports fan, if a sports fan's mind went that direction before it went to the sports, think about how many people like this could appeal to.
Sure. Well, for me, it was just, it's August, 9th. I'm just so hungry for football content at this point.
Well, if you have community food, you wouldn't be super hungry.
We don't have community football food right now. I'm waiting for it. No, it's one of those things where I'm just so desperate for football content that I'll watch almost anything at this point. It's the only reason, in my opinion, people watch Hard Knocks at all, because I don't find it terribly interesting most of the time. It's so edited down and everything, but you're just you're getting so close to football and you just want anything football related.
That's true.
And plus, the thing for me with Matt Rule is I'm just curious about what it looks like, right? Because we've gotten little bits and pieces just from his public appearances and things like that. This feels like a little behind the scenes sneak peek of what kind of happens behind closed doors that we don't normally get to see. And so there's a curiosity there just because of the Matt Rule factor of it all. But I'd probably watch one of these every year because by August, you just want football.
You're itching for it.
Right? And so I get that you don't actually get any real football during the, you get a couple scenes maybe of guys practicing, but it's just the fact that like, okay, this is the team. This is, these are our guys. It just feels like you're getting closer while you're watching.
Are you a fantasy football player or no?
Yeah, I do fantasy football.
So does that help you at all throughout the month of August? Preparing for a fantasy football draft, you're doing a ton of research, and
so
you're just trying to get to that point of, okay, it's week 1 of the NFL season.
Not really. I think it's a visual thing. Like I like watching. Like this is about the time of year that I'll start watching games from last year. Like I've started watching some South Carolina games from last year to get kind of a feel for what Marcus Satterfield was doing. I've started to watch some Syracuse games from last year to see what Tony White was doing. I have no interest in watching Nebraska games from last year because A, I don't think we'll learn anything, and B, that was just painful, right?
You don't want to rewatch Georgia Southern?
I do not want to.
Sure?
I did post game for Georgia Southern, and it was ugly.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I'm shocked.
It was. Well, it was kind of funny though because I got a text about halfway through the show. I was like, "Yeah, Frost is going to be fired tomorrow," and I was like, "Oh, okay." But because at the time everybody was like, "Oh, it's going to be after Oklahoma or whatever the buyout dropped, right?" And then, I get this text. It's like, "Yeah, it's happening like in 12 hours." Yeah. I was like, "Oh, cool."
What happens when you have some boosters on hand,
right?
Instant funding.
But it was no, it's one of those things where this is where I start rewatching games, and I start so something like this is kind of a breath of fresh air to give me a little Nebraska football content before the games get here.
And I thought the episode was just really fun in its entirety because you got to watch bits and pieces of practice. You got to see what the dorm life was actually like.
I have a question about dorm life here.
Go ahead.
Did it seem like some of those guys were moving in for the year? Some of those dudes brought so much stuff.
Well, you're there for a month.
No, I think they're only there for 2 weeks. I think they're moving out after the
you're
first
right.
2 weeks.
So, okay, yeah, so you're right. So you're there for 2 weeks, but you also want to live comfortably while you're there.
I get that.
So having the box fan was important. Having the certain I don't know if it's a mattress pad or a blanket, to make you feel like that you're still in your own bed when you're not.
I get that, but these guys were looking like they just they were living there permanently. What is happening here?
Yeah, I didn't really look too much into that because it is a dorm room at the end of the day.
First thing I noticed, I was like, these guys are bringing so much stuff.
But I felt most captivated at the end of the episode when John Cook was speaking.
Yeah, that was really good.
I thought it was really cool to see him talk to this team, and Coach Rule acknowledge that, hey, there are plenty of current winners at this university.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts right now with John Cook, and it can be you very soon. But I also liked how John Cook was, he was Mr. Football for his entire life before he graduated and then was forced to, pick up a teaching job. And then he just happened to coach women's sports, volleyball in particular, and there he goes, right? But I liked the question that he presented to the team, and it was, are you willing to bet on yourself?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, everything that I took home from this little episode is really, because it is episode 1, and it's the beginning of everything. Is this team willing to bet on themselves this year? Are you willing to bet that you'll be a good football team, that you will operate the right way, the way that it's being taught to you, will you stand for one another? Are you going to be with your brother through thick and thin? Are you going to, if one person's down, are you going to help pick them back up?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that the chemistry that you guys are not only just building right now, but are going to keep with you as you go throughout the season? There's so much that can branch off on, are you willing to bet on yourself?
Yeah.
That I just think would really resonate with this team in the position they're in today.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about that part, because I kind of got hooked on that part as well with the are you willing to bet on yourself, was it kind of got me thinking of the types of people that bet on themselves, right? And there's, in my mind, basically two types of people. There's the irrationally confident people who will bet on themselves no matter what, and often in situations where they probably shouldn't. And then there's the people who are betting on themselves because they know they're prepared. And so I think it's good to have a handful of irrationally confident people, because that's what makes you believe you can do things that you probably shouldn't believe you can do. But you need the core of your team to be willing to bet on themselves because they're ready for it. They've prepared for it. And that's where the confidence comes from. Most people aren't willing to bet on themselves until they've got the confidence to do so. And that confidence comes from preparation. I think that is kind of the root of what you're getting to there, because, and what John Cook was getting to, because that's what Matt Rule's been talking about constantly, is getting prepared, earning the right to practice the next day, earning the right to play Minnesota, earning the right to win football games, earning the right to wear the Nebraska helmet, all of these things. And the way you do that is through preparation. And if you put that preparation in, if you earn the right to do all those things, then you're in a position where you will be confident enough to bet on yourself. And so it's the next logical step. The betting on yourself is the next logical step to all of this stuff that Matt Rule's been talking about. And Matt Rule's kind of shown it as well, right? He's probably could have waited for an easier job when Baylor came up. When he was at Temple, maybe it wouldn't have been as high profile in terms of major conference, but there were easier jobs out there than Baylor football when he took over. When he's coming back from the NFL this year, there were some SEC teams that wanted him. There were some other teams around the country that were interested. There's probably easier jobs out there right now than Nebraska taking over where he's at. But he's confident because of the preparation he's put in, and he's betting on himself. He's already shown, hey, if you bet on yourself and you're prepared, you can achieve and have and get the results that you want. He's just trying to instill that from what he's done in his life into his players now. And John Cook, I think, exemplified that really, really well. And, this is this thing that Matt Rule keeps saying. They just want to be around winners. They just want to see the mentality of winners. They want to see how those people operate. I mean, nobody wins at Nebraska more than John Cook. So that's a good place to start.
So another thing that we'll get into, and I'll hold off on the majority of this for when we come back from break. But when I was out at the bachelor party over the weekend, we kind of got into a little back and forth. People were asking me questions about Coach Rule, and the big question that they presented was, how long is he going to stay? So we'll talk about that when we come back, and my response to them. We'll also chat with Brian Christopherson at 8 o'clock today. We have Kevin Sjuts at 8:30, and a familiar name, Damon Benning. He'll be on the phone at 9 o'clock. We will get his thoughts on high school camp that's going on right now, fall camp over at Nebraska, conference realignment, just a lot of stuff that he can get to. He's a smorgasbord, a charcuterie board, if you will. We'll take a short break. More CNC next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I showed the team the calendar last night. Like, yeah, CJ Campbell kind of heads up that area for us. Jordan Litton put that up. Yeah, CJ Campbell kind of heads up that area for us. Jordan Litton put that episode together. I think a couple different guys were doing it. Jay Litt, when I first got here, we didn't really have a creative staff in football. Jay Litt's We didn't really have a creative staff in football. Jay Litt's a student here in Nebraska. He's unbelievable. Like, I've never been around somebody like that. I trust him implicitly. Like, if you guys know me, I'm like, hey, I want to know what the show's about. I want to know. We didn't really have a creative staff in football.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
We didn't really have a creative staff in football. Jay Litt's a student here in Nebraska. He's unbelievable. Like, I've never been around somebody like that. I trust him implicitly. Like, if you guys know me, I'm like, hey, I want to know what the show's about. I want to know this. Jay Litt, I said, do your thing, bro. Like, he knows what we're trying to get done. Mike Wallace kind of is like so Mike Wallace and CJ and Jay Litt, they came up with the idea. They executed it. They ran with it. And I thought it was great. I thought it was fun. And, this next episode, I'm sure they'll even have more behind the scenes stuff. So we have to, balance making sure the kids feel comfortable, our men feel comfortable, like, hey, we're not giving away, making them look bad. But there's a lot of good things happening. I want our fans to be a part of it. So I thought the show was cool.
Hey, welcome back. Before we get into it, Sunday, August 13th, 7 p.m. Central on Nebraska Public Media and Facebook Live. It's in the Deed the Glory Memorial Stadium, and it is something you don't want to miss. It's Nebraska Public Media's newest local sports doc following the evolution of the stadium. You have interviews with T.O., Eric Crouch, Trev Alberts, Mike Babcock. Damon Benning is narrating the piece and reveals little-known and lost-to-history facts, such as the underground indoor track, which Ravi and I found out yesterday, and a partial South Stadium collapse in the 90s. So make sure you check that out, August 13th, 7 p.m. on Nebraska Public Media. Over the weekend, Ravi, I was asked, how long is Matt Rule going to be at Nebraska? And, you know, I'm quick to defend Coach Rule right now because I think I have a good gauge on it.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going anywhere anytime soon, and there's a couple of reasons for it. One, I feel like he tried and failed enough to know where he wants to be. So he was at Temple and he went up the ladder. And I used kind of this analogy way back when he was at Temple, you know, he was driving, right? But then when he stopped for gas, it was kind of like okay, now I'm going to stop at Baylor and now I'm going to drive a little bit. And then, okay, I need gas again. So I'm going to stop in Carolina. And so like he was stopping at so many different points to where it was like, he was always trying to get somewhere, be somebody different or be somebody new.
Mm-hmm.
And he was reaching his goal. Everybody wants to be an NFL head coach. If you're a football coach, the dream is to be an NFL head coach someday.
Everybody.
Well, then it didn't work out the way he thought it would,
yeah,
or that he wanted it to.
Yeah.
So when he comes to Nebraska now and he signs a massive deal, a long-term contract,
mm-hmm.
that's reason number one why I am 95% sure that he's not going anywhere anytime soon in regards to finishing out his contract and maybe staying here even longer than people think if and when he's successful. The second point to all of that is you see what's happening with conference realignment right now.
Mm-hmm.
You see how all the teams are starting to either come into the Big Ten, the SEC, or, you know, we'll get into the ACC stuff a little bit more today because of the news with SMU. But you see how everything's going in college football and how the Big Ten is becoming this premier conference. He's not going to want to go anywhere if he's getting, for one, the support from the school. Two, he's successful at the university.
Mm-hmm.
And three, guys, he really likes the town of Lincoln.
Sure.
He really just likes being here.
Yeah.
And he likes having his kids a part of the Lincoln school system or the Omaha school system. He likes having that option for his family. He moved here for his family. He didn't move here just to coach. He talks about it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He could be on his couch right now. He'd be making just as much money as an analyst on TV.
Yeah.
He could do all of that stuff, but no, he chose to coach football again right away. He wants to be here. And so that's the point that I push across with everybody is look, it's easy to say, yeah, he's jumped around from spot to spot, but he also reached his peak and now he's coming back down to, or if you say he didn't reach his peak, say there's a peak a little bit further up where like that's ultimately where he knows he can be, he wants to be, that's where he is today.
Yeah. So I think the Carolina experience for Matt Rule gave him really good perspective on who he wants to be in this profession. And, you know, it's not just because he wasn't successful, but I think he wasn't successful because what he enjoys and is good at isn't necessarily what the NFL values as a head coach or needs as a head coach, right? I think he realized he's more teacher than he is coach. He's more leader than he is coach. Is he good at the football stuff? Obviously, you don't get to this point in your career without being good at the football stuff. But I think his skill set is uniquely suited to young people in this point of their lives. And I think he realized that when he went to Carolina, that it was just a different thing. The things that he cares about, the things that he likes teaching, the way that
he doesn't like letting guys go.
And the way that he likes to lead is just a better fit for the college game. And that's not an insult. I mean, the same thing can be said about Nick Saban, right? Like Nick Saban did the NFL thing, came back, it didn't work. He's the greatest college coach of all time. Like, it's a lot of really successful college coaches. Their skills are uniquely suited to coaching college. That doesn't mean they couldn't coach in the NFL in the right position, the right situation, and if Matt Rule is successful at Nebraska, he may get a call again about the NFL. But I think what he realized about himself was more important than what other opportunities may come down the line. And when you take the NFL off the table, which I think we can, I don't know that there's other college jobs that would necessarily appeal to him in a way that would take him away from Nebraska. The one that everybody would be worried about, obviously, is Penn State, obviously where he went to school and everything. But James Franklin's not going anywhere. I mean, he keeps signing extensions. He's there for the long term.
He's successful there.
Yeah, and he's successful there. He's there for the long term. So, I mean, maybe you're talking about several years down the line if James Franklin goes to
how
the
much is
NFL,
Penn State an upgrade if Nebraska is good again?
Well, that's the thing. If you get Nebraska rolling, that's the whole presumption here, right? Because obviously if he doesn't win at Nebraska, he's not going to be here very long. That's just how it works. But assuming that they get to a certain level of winning again, even if it's, consistently 8-9 games a year, yeah, I don't know how much better of a job Penn State is than Nebraska. People say Lincoln's hard to get to. Try getting to Happy Valley. Like that place is a I believe multiple hour drive from the nearest airport. Worst case scenario, Lincoln is 45 minutes from Omaha, and there's more flights that go into Lincoln now than there used to be. So, that's the one job that I think people would be concerned about if he's successful here, is him leaving for Penn State. And
I've also never heard him ever say once that he wants to coach at his alma mater.
Right. That's just the one people naturally think. You go, oh, I want to go. And, maybe being at Nebraska, he sees the pitfalls of being at your alma mater by the guy that he succeeded here, right? I mean, it's not always sunshine and rainbows when you go back to take over your alma mater. Sometimes it's really difficult, and it puts an amount of pressure on you that, it's a hard enough job already. You don't need the extra stuff. And, it's not like, he's from New York originally. He ended up moving to Pennsylvania during his youth. Like, it's not like he was born and raised in Pennsylvania. It's not like he grew up in Happy Valley necessarily. And so, it's a little bit different. If I had to bet on it, I would say he's here for the long haul.
Well, and Coach Rule's all about Nebraska nice. He's all about his family and being in a place that, people treat you with a lot of respect.
Yeah.
You don't get that too often up in the Northeast. And I know that
a little bit different,
not only from experience, but even when talking to Tony White in the offseason, I asked him about, what's your what's the thing you notice most about changing from Syracuse to Lincoln? And he's like, the first thing out of his mouth was the people are much nicer. Right. So people just you like to feel good, and you also like to be respected.
Sure.
And you just like when people talk to you in a nice tone versus like, hey, I'm always out to get you.
Also,
and I think about that too from like the family approach, the family point of view.
Yeah, if you're a Nebraska coach and you're winning here, it's hard to find a better place to be. Yes, if you
with better tradition, with whatever. I don't know if you can.
I just mean a better lifestyle. Like if you're winning here, the life that you get to lead is pretty great. The same thing if you're a player.
And then when you're done, it's almost even greater.
Yeah, you're a legend forever because you can't do anything wrong at that point. Like once you retire, this is a really good place that if you can get it going, it's really, really nice to be here.
No doubt about that.
Obviously, the last few coaches haven't had that. But if you kind of ingratiate yourself with the community the way he has, and again, the X factor here is wins. If he doesn't get wins, it doesn't matter how long he wants to be here. He's only going to be here for a certain amount of time. If he doesn't get wins, it becomes a much less, I don't want to say hospitable, because people aren't going to be outwardly mean if they see Matt Rule on the street, right? I don't think, not most people, but it's a really great place to be and live if you can get this thing going at all.
Now, I teased that we would get into realignment chatter. Let's do that next, because there's something on my mind that I want to get to. And I also would like to share a couple of these athlete diaries that I've compiled. But something you said yesterday that really piqued my interest. You said you believe the ACC is in a better place right now than the Big 12. I want to know your reasoning for that when we come back. Stick around, more CNC after the break.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
I think it translates really well. You have a lot of freedom, a lot of space. We're kind of just taking it day by day. We know we have to show up every day, not taking any days off. So it's taking it one step at a time.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds.
Is it really hard to hear in here today, or is it just me? And I don't think this even works as a show. So I'm like yelling in it, so don't make fun of me.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
We're kind of just taking it day by day. We know we have to show up every day, not take any days off. So it's taking it one step at a time.
I believe they call that common language, Robbie. Galen Sanford.
They love common language.
Have we heard day by day yet this year? Not too sure. Welcome back.
Got to earn the right.
Coffee and Cream in the morning on ESPN Radio alongside Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers, live from the Pinnacle Bank Championship at the club at Indian Creek. We are happy to have you with us. Going into the break, I had mentioned that last night you had texted me and you said, I think the ACC is in a better spot than the Big 12. And, before we even get too deep into this. I thought it was interesting because I'm like, okay, if Ravi thinks the ACC is better, I'm going to have to come up with some counterpoint to why the Big 12 is better. So this is what I think about at home after I get asked a question, how I can be argumentative, how I can be confrontational.
Sure.
But you know what? I sat back a few seconds later and said, I'm going to let Ravi go. And then I'm going to see where his mind takes me, because I don't know if I even have a good take on who out of these two conferences are in the better position right now.
Yeah, so to be clear, I don't know that either of them are in a great position.
Okay, well this will help my my rebuttal.
I'm not sure that I necessarily buy into the two conference only model that some people are talking about, where it's just the Big Ten and the SEC, and each of them have 28 teams or whatever the number is, because I think there's going to be a third league. It's obviously going to be a step down from the other two, but there's enough other Power 5 teams and like borderline Power 5 teams. Like, for example, in the Big 12's brought in like UCF and Cincinnati, and ACC's talking to SMU. These teams that haven't been Power 5 teams necessarily, but are kind of on that cusp right there. Utah not that long ago was not a Power 5 team. Now they're one of the better teams coming over from the Pac-12, right? So I think there's enough of those teams that you're going to need a third conference that's still technically a major conference, but obviously a step below the Big Ten and the SEC. The reason that I think the ACC is in a better spot is when you're looking at these teams, right? I'm looking at the Big 12. It's like a solid B league.
And you're just talking about football, right?
Yes, football.
Okay.
Only. We're only talking about college football.
Okay, because this
basketball is a totally different story.
I was going to say they're a different animal.
The ACC is probably better than the Big 12 in basketball too, but
really?
Well, you've got your historical powers, or your
North
Carolina, your Duke.
But today, I would lean Big 12 as the premier basketball conference, especially now with the addition of Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona's a nice addition there. Obviously, you've got Baylor and Kansas.
And I'm not knocking the ACC, but I think the ACC could match up, in line with the SEC here.
So we're talking about two things here. We're talking about currently where they're at, and also brand names, because the brand names are almost more powerful than your current success in the conference realignment conversation.
Right.
So I'm looking at college football only, though. The brand names, the Big 12 just really doesn't have them. They've got a lot of solid B brands, your Kansas States, your Oklahoma States, your Texas Techs, your Baylors, your BYUs, your Arizona States, Utah. Those are all really solid brands. None of those are powerhouses or blue bloods.
I can understand that for football.
So for football, they're about the only, out of the four conferences left, because RIP Pac-12, they're the only conference that doesn't have blue bloods in their conference as it currently sits. Now, that's one factor. The other factor, and you can just look at teams that have won national titles in their conference, right? The only ones in what will be the conference next year are BYU in 84 and Colorado in 90. And I believe that was a split. So you're talking about over 30 years ago and one-offs for both of those teams. So kind of aberrations. You go to the ACC. You've got
Florida State, Clemson,
North Carolina's a name brand. Duke is not in this.
For football, but I can you're tickling me. All right.
And then you've got Miami, which is a huge brand.
That's a name brand.
Multiple national titles. You've got teams that you would consider powerhouse, blue blood, multiple national title winners. And here's the wild card with the ACC too. Everybody assumes that when the day comes that Notre Dame has to join a conference, it'll be the Big Ten. Well, they already have like partial membership into the ACC. Now, all of a sudden, let's pretend that Notre Dame says, you know what, we're throwing our hat in with the ACC because we're already comfortable there. We already play a 4 or 5 game football schedule with them anyway. Then all of a sudden, you've got Clemson, Florida State, Miami, Notre Dame. Those are 4 of the biggest brands in college football. You can put that up against Nebraska, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State in the Big Ten. You can put that up against Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Florida in the SEC. your top 4 are about as good as anybody's if you can convince Notre Dame to become a full member.
So I'm with you with the brand name recognition. It makes a lot of sense that the Big 12 has taken a step back because they don't have it as much.
Your Texas.
But I will say this,
Oklahoma.
the Big 12 does seem, even though they lost Oklahoma and Texas, that they still have their ducks in a row. They still have their ish figured out.
Listen, they did an incredible job of pivoting and keeping the conference alive in the way that obviously the Pac-12 couldn't. Because
in basketball, I really believe was a huge piece of that.
Not that long ago, we were talking about the Big 12 about to go extinct the same way that we're talking about the Pac-12 currently going extinct, right? So they've done an incredible job to salvage that, both with some non-name brand borderline group of 5 schools like your UCFs, your Cincy's, your BYUs,
right?
And waiting it out and surviving where the Pac-12's leadership couldn't. And then they got to obviously get the bounty of Colorado, Arizona State.
And ultimately it was leadership that destroyed the Pac-12. And it wasn't just the current commissioner. It was the previous commissioner that didn't set up the conference at all in a good light. But,
the Pac-12 has been poorly run for years. I mean, this is not.
You don't have a TV contract
after this
in
season.
line.
Yeah.
Like that's priority number 1 as a commissioner of a conference. You have to have financial funding for your teams.
It's almost the only thing a commissioner does that matters.
Really, it is
long term.
And if you have a big one, that's why Kevin Warren is like getting thumbs up from people.
Yes.
Because he did his job. He may not have done it the way you wanted him to, but he still did what he was supposed to do.
And listen, he handled some things poorly. Obviously, with the COVID stuff, that was a really.
And who didn't?
Right. Like, it's not like he had a playbook on how the proper way to handle it. Right. So I give him a little bit of pass on there because A, he was new on the job, and B, it was kind of an unprecedented situation. But when it mattered, what did he do? He got USC and UCLA in the conference, and he nailed the TV rights deal. That was his job, and he crushed it. Okay. And now he's
And he did that in how many years?
Like,
oh yeah,
3 basically. And so,
and 1 didn't count because we're counting COVID.
Right. So he got the job done that he was hired to do. Right. And then he gets, because of that, he gets to move on and have a different high profile job. The Pac-12's leadership failed them year after year after year. This is going back probably more than a decade at this point, when the regional TV networks and the Pac-12 network never really got off the ground the way the Big Ten network did, and all this kind of stuff, right?
Well, also it doesn't help that your games kick off at 9:30, 10 o'clock,
Right.
sometimes 11 o'clock at night, and you're expecting people to watch. Like in the Midwest or the East Coast, I'm sorry, even the biggest of college football fans aren't watching you.
I mean, there is a little sicko committee of the Pac-12 after dark stands, but you're right. For the most part, I mean, 80% of the country's population is east of Lincoln, Nebraska, basically. So you're talking about 2 time zones past that, where, a lot of people only watch their own team anyway. And the people that are real hardcore college football fans, they really kind of stick to the main big games. And those are mostly on by prime time in their local region. And anytime there's a good Pac-12 game on, it gets moved to prime time, but then the rest of your conference gets left behind, right? And so I think there's a lot of factors for why the Pac-12 ended up failing where the Big 12 didn't. But moving forward, I think the Big 12 is in a tough spot because they don't have anywhere else to go from here. This was kind of their big move. The raiding the Pac-12 was their big move. SMU is kind of that the ACC talking about SMU. Maybe the Big 12 could bring them in, but that's not a big fish, I don't think. If they really wanted to go and try and get Stanford and Cal, I don't know how much that moves the needle for the Big 12 or the ACC for that matter. But what you're really looking at is the ACC has a little bit of a runway with this grant of rights deal. If Florida State can't figure out a way to break it in the next 6 months or whatever, they've got a little bit of runway to try and convince Notre Dame to come into the conference, and B, try and get some of the other programs that are their B-level programs, their Virginia Techs, their Virginias, their North Carolinas, up to an A level, so that when you look at that conference, you say, man, that's pretty good top to bottom. I got my 4 marquee teams, my 4 blue bloods, and then our B level is pretty good too, because that's what the Big Ten and the SEC offer right now, is you've got your stalwarts, your anchors, and then after that, you've got a really solid B level. Because right now, your B level in terms of brand, your Iowa, your Wisconsin, those types of teams, those are really, really strong. Probably, I think the B level of the Big Ten is stronger than the B level of the SEC. Now, obviously, the SEC at the very top is winning the national title, so that matters.
Mm-hmm.
But that second division of the Big Ten is stronger than the SEC brand-wise, in my opinion. Because like the Mississippi States of the world, I don't think have the same type of football brand outside of their own little community that a Wisconsin or an Iowa or a Michigan State does. So if you can get that type of level when you're the ACC, you're still going to be a step behind those other two conferences, but I still think you're in a way better spot than the Big 12.
And quick side note, SMU in the mix right now with the ACC. That's the exact type of team I was talking about yesterday that the ACC needs to add as filler time. It's a good small private school with a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of money.
And it is relatively close to the rest of the ACC teams.
Yeah, it doesn't move.
And it's a big area. I mean, you're in Dallas.
Yeah, I don't think that SMU gets you Dallas, but it's not a bad move for them.
Well, at least right now, like I said, it's that filler. It's
Yeah.
the foundation that you pour. We'll talk to Brian Christopherson next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
Yeah, maybe guys that are in treatment or something won't, but the entire team will go there. Yeah, our women's soccer team is like we have that Olympic day that we did. They're all out there. Our women's soccer team is like we have that Olympic day.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Here is Husker 24/7 senior writer, Brian Christopherson.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit of a circus act.
Brian Christopherson.
Well, I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Brian Christopherson.
I kind of enjoy that.
Here is Brian Christopherson.
Our women's soccer team is like, like we have that Olympic day that we did, and they're all out there supporting us. They're doing it with us. You see them in the halls all the time. So, I was walking one day and I asked them when their first game was, because they're in preseason too, right? And so they told me it was tonight. So I thought my daughters would be here. I was excited to take them. They're not here yet. So we're going to take the team. And, like we had Coach Cook come talk to the team, right? Like we just want to be around winning, and we want to go watch the girls win tonight. So hopefully they play a great game.
Hey, top of the hour on Coffee and Cream alongside Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers. We are out at the Pinnacle Bank Championship live from the club over at Indian Creek. Happy to have you with us. 590 ESPN Radio. We're live on Twitter, live on YouTube. The YouTube chat room is open for comments. We also will take calls, 888-638-4876. But we won't this segment because we are talking to Brian Christopherson, one of my favorites, senior writer for Husker 24/7 at Husker 24/7 BC on Twitter. Brian Christopherson, good morning.
Good morning. Nice background, guys.
Hey, you know what? This one actually isn't a green screen either. It's real. We are actually doing something for real for once. I know it comes as a shock to you, BC, but I wish I was playing right now and not talking, but I'll leave it up to the pros. They're practicing putts back there. I should also probably lower my voice, because if we're talking in proper golf terms, we should be, respectful of the course and the conditions and the players.
Getting your Andy
like
North
that.
game right.
Yeah, something similar. BC can yell while we whisper. No, I'm just kidding. BC, you've been at fall camp for the last week and a half. I've heard you asking questions over the course of this week too. But just in particular to yesterday, because we got to hear from Donnie Raiola, we got to hear from Coach Rule again. The coaches I find to get, more information out of than the players, but it does seem like you can learn something from the players and how much they talk like their position coaches and their head coach. But aside from those two things, you heard Donovan Raiola talking about the O-line. You heard Matt Rule mentioning how he likes to have 7, like that would be a good number for them, 7 offensive linemen. And then, every other young offensive lineman is just a bonus for them. How notable is that number 7, or even just how notable is it that they're talking about having 7 really good offensive linemen right now?
Well, I said, I tweeted out a story link to that last night, and I said notable. And part of the reason I did that is I can remember not too long ago when Mike Cavanaugh was the O-line coach here during the Riley era, and he was playing only 5 guys, and which a lot of people do actually. And the late great Milt Tenneper even defended him on that. But I remember every practice it was like a topic with Mike Cavanaugh, like, what about a rotation? Why in the old days they used to play 10 guys and this and that. And so there was this debate around Nebraska all through August, September, or whatever, about what's the proper number of linemen that should be in your rotation, and everybody had a big take on it. So that it was sort of aimed at that audience that can remember that stuff. But it is interesting to hear the philosophy on every staff on, what constitutes security as far as how you feel about yourself in the trenches. And he gave you the number basically on that. It's if I have a rotating 7, and maybe rotating is even the wrong word, but just 7 guys you feel good about. Maybe they're going to use 5 guys almost all the time, but there's 2 guys on the side that you believe in. Mm-hmm. That was interesting to me. But then, the other thing that popped up was the names he mentioned, and some of them are first year guys that are, maybe they can be those 9-10 guys as he was talking. And that's your Sam Sledges, your Gunnar Gatulas. You have to be a guy with alliteration in your name, apparently.
Justin Jenkins.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Justin Evan Jenkins is in that mix too. So that was good. But I think what people are really dialed in now is like, okay, I saw Nuri was out yesterday. Nuili at right guard had a day off, whatever. How long is that going to be? That's the thing people are going to pay attention to the most in fall camp, knowing that it's going to be very tough as much as everyone loves Teddy around here, Teddy Prohoskin, talking about him, he just hasn't played a lot of football, and it's been a tough runway back. And without this camp to actually practice full go, which he won't have, even if he is like available week 1 or week 2, we got to remember it's going to take time for him to get into, into the operation. So I think people got to adjust their thinking a bit. Turner Corcoran is your left tackle. He's been the left tackle, and he's probably going to be your left tackle for a little bit into the season at least.
Brian, if you don't think that you can necessarily count on Teddy Prohaska just because of injury and rust and all of that, can you get to 7 names you think they're going to feel good at by week 1?
It's a good question. I think that'll come down to I didn't mention him, but Henry Latofsky working the other day in Nuri's spot, at least when we were there at right guard. He's a guy who played almost, I think, 260 snaps or something like that last year and got a lot of experience. It was a little rough for him at times. There were some lessons learned, but he's a guy who you're hoping in year 3 and really his second year of playing college football that he makes that move. So he would be a guy you could say could be in that possible 7. Ideally, you're thinking Prohaska is one of them, right? When he's back, even though if there's rust and it's going to take some time. So they're not that far away from it, but there is still room to reach, and honestly, it would be great if you could have a Sledge or a Gatula who you just feel awesome about, and a couple of those other true freshmen, but you don't have to really use them much. They could play here scattered. Maybe you do get one blowout win or something, and they can get in there and get some action and still keep their red shirt and all that. Mm-hmm. That would be your ideal scenario, because it's very tough. It's so tough to play that position like in your second or third year in college ball, let alone your first year. So it's great to hear updates about those guys, but also you're kind of hoping it's just positive updates while they can keep growing behind the scenes if it's going to be a good 23 Husker season.
BC, staying with the offense here and some updates that are out there. We've talked about it a lot with you about the wide receiving room and the question marks that are still there. And even yesterday, we heard Coach Rule say that Xavier Betts was not out at practice, that he was injured. He didn't say it was a long-term injury by any means, but he was still injured. And, another young name that we have yet to hear a lot about, and I've heard the fan base question where he's been, is Malachi Coleman. Can you speak to any of those two things about either what you've seen at practice or what you know?
Well, all I know right now is that they weren't there yesterday, and I don't think there's not a disciplinary thing or anything like that from what I know. So it's just it's a deal where I don't want to attach things that I can't say for certain, but I do know that there was also a stomach bug that was sort of going through the team a little bit that people need to at least know about, that, you never know if that got a guy or two over there as well. So I think it's just something you got to watch through the next week. Like, if a week from now we're still talking about this, obviously, then it's a much bigger story. If it's, just a deal where a guy is injured or there's a flu or something or whatever that pops up sometimes in August, this happens and you miss a day or two of camp. That just sort of goes with the flow here. We do have a way in Nebraska about if someone is not visible to us, we seem to go to the worst case scenario often, and that's I would just
run here, BC.
And I understand it, but I would just say let's hold the phone on that. It's camp, and guys do get dinged up and stuff like that happen. So let's see what happens. But to the part of those are guys you want to be in your rotation or a part of the equation here, and they are thin at wide receiver. And I think even going into fall camp before that, we kind of wondered about that position group, because we'll always say, well, they got Billy Kemp, you got Marcus Washington, but Marcus has had a bad little run here of stuff, with the broken hand, and then he gets back out there and has a lower body. Fortunately, it's not going to be as bad as I think they thought on the spot, and he's going to be back soon. But after those guys, they do need like a Xavier to sort of bust onto the scene, or we haven't heard much about Isaiah Garcia Castaneda this camp. You need somebody like that. You do need one of those freshmen to be sort of special, not like he's the top guy. Billy Kemp can be the top guy, but can you be like that fifth guy? And I do think a good story is Alex Bullock. I think he is a very good player. And anyone who rolls their eyes and is like, oh, okay, here we go with the walk-on receiver thing again. If you watched him play at Omaha Creighton Prep, that guy's he can play, and his brother is tearing it up on the defensive side. So it's kind of in the genes. So don't be surprised if Alex Bullock is a factor for this team too.
All right, BC, stay right here for me though. Is if everybody were healthy, I mean, you could probably, guess that the top 4 guys, at least just based on previous success, would be Billy Kemp. It would be Xavier Betts, Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, and Marcus Washington. Those would kind of be like your top 4. But after that, we don't really know what comes next with this wide receiving room. Like, who would be the 5th guy in your mind that would be after those 4? Is it Bullock or is it somebody else?
Well, I mean, from what I've heard, the most recently, and I always go with most recent, Bullock's in that mix. Josh Fleeks was back. And, he missed early camp. That's an interesting sort of sidebar. We'd got to get used to this, too. Around here in the past, if a guy wasn't there the first day of something, or, it was like, well, that's the end of that story. You wrote the obituary, right? And that's not the case anymore. Like, we got examples of this already. Tommy Hill was actually not, if you remember in the spring, was suspended for the first day or whatever. Anthony Grant was. For whatever reasons, but they weren't out there immediately. They came back pretty quickly, and they're in the thick of it now. And Fleeks we'll see if he can get in the thick of it too. He obviously knows the system, but he was around when we were there the other day. So he's back, and maybe he factors into that, what you're talking about, to the question, Andrew, like, could he be a 4th, 5th guy? He hasn't put up big numbers in a while and all that, so you wonder a little bit, but he's definitely a guy who knows the system and hopefully is being a good mentor over there.
BC, Jeff Sims was named to the Davey O'Brien Award watch list, one of 35 quarterbacks nationally to be named to that list. If Jeff Sims is a top 35 quarterback nationally, what does that look like? Like, what's his path to being a top 35-ish quarterback in the country?
It's bringing the picks down by 3 or 4 and bringing the completion percentage up by 4 or 5, something like that. Like, if he's in that humming along and he's like 60 in his low mid 60s completion percentage, but he's just keeping the picks down, Nebraska could probably be pretty effective. And it's also him, when you look at the stat sheet at the end of the regular season and you look at that the part it's the most important part. It's the G category, the games category. How many games did you play? And availability is the biggest weapon. And when you talk about the quarterbacks right now at Nebraska, it's awesome, I think, for fans to hear that Chubba Purdy responded to the challenge and is having a good camp. But I do think Husker fans are also like, I don't know. I watched it last season. And
do we really need to see him?
Yeah. So Jeff Sims, I think in a lot of people's minds, not seeing everything that goes on over there, people are saying this guy's got to be pretty good. He's got to be savvy and efficient and not turnover prone, and he's got to be healthy most of all. He's got to be that guy who avoids that 2 or 3 week stretch like that happened to Casey Thompson. Not his fault, of course, but you're getting hammered. And his O-line's got to protect him too. And then also you got to be maybe sharp about how you run him, and you're not just running him for running's sake, like we have sometimes seen in the past with quarterbacks. Ideally, the I-back run game is a legitimate threat or something you can hold steady with. So when it's 3rd and 2 or 3, you're not having to crash your quarterback into the line like they used to get that first down because they can't pick it up with a tailback. So that would be a nice way to help save Jeff Sims too.
BC, on the defensive side, another young and super talented local kid in Maverick Noonan out for the year, as we found out yesterday. Mav was a type that probably wasn't going to play a whole bunch this year, but he was still in the mix of being one of those freshmen that if, later on in the season, if he is proving himself that maybe this defense needs a spark, it could be him. It won't be this year, though. And I'm curious on how you think an injury like this will impact his development going forward.
The good part, if there is a silver lining, is it wasn't described as like an ACL or whatever it is. It's like it's going to take 6 months, so it's obviously serious enough. But it seems like something where hopefully a young body can pop back from it pretty quickly. And you laid it out pretty good within the question there. He was sort of on that fringe of those guys who maybe can get in up to 4 games and you get that experience, but maybe that's where it stops. And so I don't want to take away from that. For an individual, that's painful, especially if you've never dealt with like a serious injury in your life and you get to college, you're ready to roll, you have some momentum, you feel like, and then you got to get your mental game back right, after that gets stopped in place. But I think he can probably bounce back from this pretty good. And the fact that he was likely looking toward a red shirt, I would think, probably eases the pain a little bit for him, and where you're just like, all right, I'm going to go back to the lab and grind and I'll be ready next year because that was going to be my year anyway. So I don't think this has to be something that just, waylays you and has you on the floor. I think he'll respond to it, especially knowing that family.
BC, I'm curious, we've mentioned some freshmen that we think maybe you'll get some games in, but likely won't be a key part of rotations. Guys like Sledge, Mav before the injury came in. Matt Rule mentioned Jalen Lloyd a little bit yesterday as part of the wide receiver group as well. Is there a guy or a couple guys you think that as true freshmen are actually going to be kind of intricate parts of their unit? I mean, are we looking at the D-line with like a Princewell and a Cam Lenhart, or are you looking somewhere else?
Yeah, I would start there. I don't completely slam the door on because you never know at running back if like a Quentin Ives is just like catches it and he has the goods at some point in camp or whatever, and all of a sudden a guy gets dinged up and you throw him in there and he looks pretty good and he's like the headline for a week. You never know at that position, but I think you're starting in the right place with Princewell and Cam, who have been out there pretty consistently with the, I don't want to say the first string, but the first, second string type group. And so they're obviously going to play. I wonder about Eric Fields. I don't know if he can pop in at Rover or wherever, because it's pretty deep. Even with the Farmer departure last week. But they love him so much. Like, remember when they talked about him as a recruit, and that really hasn't changed since he got on campus. And even the other day, Rule's talking about special teams, and he's like, you see Eric Fields, and you're like, how do I not use him on every special teams unit? And they just love that guy. And so the way they speak on him makes me think somehow, some way, it feels like he's going to blow through that red shirt, whether it's all special teams or not. I don't know, but you wonder if there's some point in the season where like, we got to try this guy out in game action, like see where it goes. So, especially if, we don't know how the season is going to go. If they're like 3-5 or something and Eric Fields is on the charge and he's already burned the red shirt, like, how that'll go around here. People will be wanting to see him out there. So guys like that, you got to keep in your back pocket, not knowing if it's going to happen, but it's definitely something that's possible.
BC, I want to ask about player standouts all the way from the spring through the summer into fall now, because we're getting close to knowing who may be wearing a single digit on their jersey throughout this football season. Couple of questions wrapped up into one. That point right there, is there somebody that has, caught your eye that you're like, yeah, he'll be wearing a solo number on his jersey? And two, it almost seemed at one point yesterday, Coach Rule seemed to bite his tongue when talking about the release of the single digit jersey numbers. Is there anything like deep about what that was about? Did he say something he wasn't supposed to?
I don't know. Is single digits the new black shirts though? That's what I'm wondering.
That's what I was just going to ask you.
Yeah. We haven't got to that question even yet. Black shirts is still like 1988, I guess. But let's see. Guys who could be single digits, if we just trust our ears on this. Gifford, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Hill might go get a 0 back. I don't know. They love Tommy Hill the way he's come on and bought into things. Let's see,
Newsome probably.
Yeah, he could. Reimer, I don't know. He's always like that 2-8. So I wonder if guys. Here's another question: if guys really love their number,
right?
Do you have to give it up to be like number 3 then? But I just hope like an O lineman is like number 7 or number 1. That would be awesome. So I don't know. On the D line, Nash Hutmacher, if they're really going to give them out to everybody, Nash Hutmacher has been a leader. He's been one of the best players all off season, and is honestly one of the most important parts on this team now, because if he goes from being that sort of fringe guy to like big time, like, okay, he's making plays behind the line of scrimmage, you're seeing that lateral movement that we didn't see as much in the past, or it's improved. That could be a game changer for that D line. So I wonder if a guy on the D line like him or a Ty Robinson gets a single digit, and that'd be kind of interesting.
Wearing number 3.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun.
What would be more awkward to see? Ty Robinson or Nash Hutmacher wearing a single digit, or any offensive lineman?
I would say O lineman, only because a few defensive linemen have been trendsetters. I'm thinking of Malik Collins was 7, wasn't he? At Nebraska.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right.
Yep.
And he actually looked pretty sweet in it. You look sweet when you're like kind of a badass though. But yeah, I think O lineman on that. That's a good question though. It would look weirder on O lineman to me.
BC, last thing from me here, as you have kind of gotten to see them operate through the first week and a half of fall camp, what do you hope ultimately gets accomplished from living in the dorms to, avoiding technology to, being in the presence of one another outside of brotherhood? What do you ultimately hope gets accomplished here?
I think Nebraska fans want to see a team that they're building up something that helps with like that mental toughness and belief in one another, where when something goes astray in the third quarter with 8 minutes left, there's not a feeling in the stadium like, well, that's the thing we're going to all be talking about all week. And that's how it's been around here. And I think Rule knows that. He's tried to hit that right in the teeth with stuff he's done and trying to build up a belief. And first, it's going to take doing it, right? You're going to have that game. Maybe it's in Minneapolis where it is 17-13. You're behind going in the fourth quarter, and you got to find a way, and someone's got to make that play. But you're trying to build up all these little things that pile on top of each other so that it matters in those moments, I think, where you're not, as he said, throwing helmets on the sideline and screaming at each other, but you've got each other's back, and you're saying, well, we've got this, we can pull this thing off. And I just sense it hasn't been for lack of effort, but Nebraska football got into this realm where when one thing happens, it's a snowball effect, and you just sort of feel like it's going downhill. And so that's what you're trying to break away from, and you're trying to do it in things with building camaraderie. And also, I think just building better dudes. Like, we could all use like some time away, honestly. If you said, hey, go 2 weeks and do something, even if it's a little rough, where you're away from your phone for that part of time, I'm like all for that nowadays, because as a phone addict myself. So I just think it's good for like their mental space to get away from like the technology and all the stuff that we become so reliant on.
EC, we appreciate your time, man. Thanks so much. We'll talk again next week.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys.
That's Brian Christopherson, senior writer at Husker 24/7 at Husker 24/7 BC on Twitter. Before we take this thing to break, one more time, In the Deed, the Glory Memorial Stadium, put on by Nebraska Public Media, coming your way on Sunday at 7 o'clock. It will also be streamed on Facebook Live. It is from the original 1923 stands to today's 90,000 fan venue. That's what you're learning about. You're learning about the stadium that you all know and love. What do you do on Saturday in Nebraska? Well, You're standing up. You're standing up and you're cheering on the Cornhuskers. It features interviews with T.O., Eric Crouch, Trev Alberts, and Mike Babcock. It also reveals little known and lost history and facts, honors the 100th anniversary of the stadium, and many, many other things. It's something you don't want to miss. August 13th, 7 p.m. on Nebraska Public Media. We'll take a break.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds.
It's going good. I mean, improving every day. That's
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
it's going good. I mean, improving every day. That's the goal. You know, win the rep at practice and then improve every day. it's especially as the whole line, we're making strides together and communicating and getting better every day.
Welcome back, Coffee and Cream on ESPN Radio alongside Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers. Happy to have you with us and happy to be joined by Kevin Sjuts. Kevin, the sports director over at 1011 Now, and he joins the show with us right now. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, man. It's been way too long. I don't think I've talked to you in like a month now.
You miss me. I feel like you've missed me.
I have. What have you been up to?
Well, the feeling is mutual. We're just busy doing the summer, goodbye summer, hello fall stuff, right?
Right.
Once Big Ten Media Days hits in Indianapolis, that's pretty much the sign. Even though it's July, it feels like you completely skip over August and you go straight to September, because then you start thinking football, you start thinking volleyball, and then my children are getting ready to go back to school, and it's like all of a sudden everything that was good and fun about the past couple of months, swimming, ball games, summertime, boom, it's done. And now we're trying to get into that routine of the fall season.
So, Kevin, like you mentioned, super busy time of year for you. You've got, both personally with your kids going back to school and professionally with everything going on. You've got Nebraska football. I know you were out at the Husker volleyball practice yesterday. Also got high school football about getting ready to go as well. Where is your focus right now? What are kind of the things where you're trying to dial in on right now?
That's a great question, Ravi. The focus is not focused. It's everywhere. There's so many things happening one time. And that's what I mean about that switch from summertime to fall. Sometimes you can kind of get in a lane and you just stay there. And that would kind of speak to your question about the focus. And now it's like we're on a 7-lane highway, and we're trying to focus on high school football, and we're trying to give some attention to Nebraska volleyball, and we're trying to keep up with Matt Rule and the gang and go to those practices. So it's a big transition. Obviously, trying to keep up with Matt Rule and keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening with this team, and try to get a sense of what it might look like once they start playing games later this month. And then, by the way, you can't forget that, Volleyball Day in Nebraska is like 4 weeks away.
Wow.
And you got to start really zoning in on the volleyball team and what it might look like. They're going to be really, really good, by the way. I'm excited about what this fall could look like for John Cook and his team. And then, all these teams, all the high school football teams started practicing this week. In fact, some started 2 weeks ago, a week ago Monday, because there are I don't know if you guys remember this, but there's week 0 games, and it seems like there's even more week 0 high school football games this year than I can remember. And they have involved a number of teams from our area, our Lincoln area schools. We even have a city matchup in week 0 between Lincoln Pius X and Lincoln Northwest. So, we're going to be covering high school football games a week from Friday on August 9th. That is nuts.
That is insane. That's crazy. Before we get into some of that high school football talk, Kevin, I'd like to go back on what you were talking about with the volleyball team, because we heard John Cook speak to the football team in their little mini TV series that they're putting on, but also you mentioned them being really, really good, and it has me thinking a couple of things. One, they're a pretty new group, right? A lot of newcomers, a lot of new faces, talent, but still new. And then on the other side of that, I think about where Nebraska has, been sitting in the Big Ten, and if they can be that premier team once again, because it seems like they've always been chasing something ever since their last title.
Yeah, they can't slay that Wisconsin Dragon, and they've struggled to slay the Texas Dragon if you go back a couple of years, the 2021 season. So it's like, how do they get to the next level? How do they get over the hump, so to say? And maybe the answer is just to roll the roster over, because John Cook is such a recruiter and this program has such high esteem. They have such a high standard. So perhaps that's the answer. And, talking to Harper Murray earlier this week about what's the level of concern with the youth on this team, And she's like, what are you talking about? So like from the outside of the program looking in, like there's a lot of young people, and that seems to have a negative connotation. And for Harper and her classmates, it's like, no, this is almost a positive, because as she told me, they have fresh eyes. They don't have some of these maybe mental hurdles that the returning players might have about, oh no, it's Wisconsin. They don't have any of that. They've never lost to Wisconsin. So they have a very fun personality to them. So that's what excites me about this Nebraska volleyball season. And don't forget, one of the beauties of college athletics is that the roster turns over, and that there are new players that come in every year, and then classes go out every 4 years. And I think sometimes as fans, we've lost a little bit of that because of COVID and transfers, that there just seem to be some athletes that stay and they play 5, 6, and in a few rare instances, 7 years. But this Nebraska volleyball team is maybe a reminder that, college athletics, you get to find new favorite players, and you get to see a different product every year. And I think that they're really going to embody this, because I could see 3 freshmen for Nebraska volleyball this year.
Kevin, want to move over to Nebraska football. Obviously, we've had a decent amount of media availability so far here in fall camp. Had a couple instances where the media could go and view practice for a little bit. Just through the first week and a half, is there anything either from the practices that you've been out to, or just from the media availability, that's really stuck out to you through this first fall camp for Matt Rule?
I think the only thing that's really stuck out to me is how active these coaches are. And I'm sure you guys have heard that from so many other guests that you've had on your show. They don't miss an opportunity to correct. And it doesn't matter if it is one of the top guys on the team or a walk-on who's just trying to find some way to get on the field this year. These coaches are hands-on and constantly talking. And if you hear Matt Rule in some of those cut-ups, it sounds like he's a little bit hoarse, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think part of that, it's not just him. I think some of his assistants are that way as well. And I think some of that is because they are instructing all of the time. So, Robbie, I don't know if that's a sexy answer for you or not, because it doesn't really talk to the individual players or a group. But my overall takeaway is just continuing to watch this staff and how they are so involved with every player and with every single rep during practice.
Kevin, quickly here, got about a minute or two. I mentioned I wanted to get to high school football, and we've seen it in full swing down in Omaha. We've seen, at least I've been following your stuff and what's going on up there in Lincoln. But who impresses you out of the Lincoln schools, and who can maybe make a run at a state title this year?
Thanks for asking about the high school guys up here. I still think Lincoln is a little bit behind the Omaha area high school football-wise again this year. And I don't really know quite yet how to answer that. I think that it's kind of a hodgepodge, because I think you have a really good player in Dash Bauman at Lincoln East. I think you have some new energy and an awesome first-year head coach of Grant Trainowitz at Lincoln Southwest. I think the best overall team in Lincoln might be Lincoln Southeast. I'm going to go visit their practice either today or tomorrow. I know that they have some pretty good talent up front. They have some nice pieces on the edge. So check back in with me in about a week when we can get a bigger picture of what city football looks like in Lincoln this year. But right now, I don't know that there's one team that I can say, like, this is the best team in Lincoln and you got to check them out. Outside of maybe Parkview Christian, they're the defending 6-man champs, baby.
Okay.
I'm going to throw a little 6-man love in there. So, if you're asking me about Lincoln football, hey, we got a state champ in our city, and it's at Parkview Christian.
Kevin, we appreciate your time this morning, man. Thanks so much, and I will follow up in a couple of weeks.
All right, sounds good. You guys be well.
You too, man. That's Kevin Sjuts at Kevin Sjuts, SJUTS on Twitter. He's the sports director over at 1011 now. Some things I still want to get to, Ravi, are those athlete diaries.
Absolutely.
That we've been compiling. And I've got 4 that I want to share, 4 that have details that, nobody thinks about but the person.
Sure.
So we'll do that when we come back. We'll also have Damon Benning coming up at 9 o'clock, and then we'll play Gone in 60 Seconds, presented by Dingman's at 9:45. A short break. We'll be back with the Athlete Diaries next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes.
I mean, I'd like to be a big physical, offensive line that can do a lot of things, right? At the end of the day, we want to run the ball and stop.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
I'd like to be a big physical, offensive line that can do a lot of. I'd like to be a big physical, offensive line that can do a lot of things, right? At the end of the day, we want to run the ball and stop the run, and we want to protect our quarterback and affect their quarterback. So, we need big, powerful guys up there that are smart and can handle all the looks. And I'd like to be a big, physical, offensive line that can do a lot of things, right? At the end of the day, we want to run the ball and stop the run, and we want to protect our quarterback and affect their quarterback. So, we need big, powerful guys up there that are smart and can handle all the looks. And our defense certainly provides a lot of challenges. They see a different defense on every play. They're training and they're coming along.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes.
Just understanding the standard, as an offensive lineman, as a defensive lineman, right? They're all improving, that's what, all those young guys are working really hard to understand the standard that we work at, right? And as a young guy, you learn a lot of offense, right? So at times,
I've been all over corner and safety. I feel like, everybody, they making me.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
I feel like Yeah, everybody, they making me better every day. We getting out there competing. Ain't nobody taking it light. Yeah, they've been helping me get better.
I could hang out with Malcolm Hart, dog.
Oh, yeah.
I really think
Absolutely.
I could. He had me smiling throughout that whole little press conference. Welcome back, Coffee and Cream on ESPN Radio. We are live on Twitter, live on YouTube, the Hurrdat Sports YouTube page. We'll be on KFOR in Lincoln starting at 9 o'clock. But as I teased, I wanted to get into some athlete diaries because we talked a little bit about conference realignment already today. And, as much as this is fun to talk about, it also has an impact on people that, kind of get left behind here because it really is all about football. Mm-hmm. You're making these moves because the big money grab is how can we enhance or build the biggest, baddest football conference alive? And the people that get left behind are the soccer players of the world, the baseball, softball players, the track and cross country runners, the other Olympic sports that are out there mm-hmm. that, for lack of a better term, were forgotten about to begin with, but now are just really feeling the massive burden that's left on them. Avery Howard joins us now. She's just kind of out here at the Pinnacle Bank Championship today working with our Hurrdat Sports team. And I'm like, I did talk to you the other day, so we might as well just bring you on and just, plop you down in a chair. Avery, good morning.
Thanks for having me.
So, okay, what I kind of asked, and I asked 4 different athletes to give me their perspective on the conference realignment, how it affects the smaller sports, how if you were still playing right now, if you were playing soccer at Maryland and had to travel to USC for a match, like how that would weigh on you. What would the travel burden be like? The school burden, the prep, does your body take a toll just by flying there? Or in a lot of ways, you wouldn't bus all the way there, but on longer road trips, soccer is a sport that buses. Yeah. Baseball is a sport that buses, mm-hmm. unless you're a big program. You don't get the charter flights. I mean, you may get a commercial flight, but you don't get the charter planes. You don't get the comfort and the meals that come along with having a lot of money in your sport. And you kind of started it all off with, you think we're actually going to revert back before we actually move too far forward.
Potentially. I think there's going to be a situation where we go so far one direction, and I understand why we have to do it for media rights and money at the end of the day. Like, you can't survive without it. I understand that, but I think we're already a little bit uncomfortable with it, and who knows, maybe it plays out and we'll surprise ourselves and we'll somewhat enjoy it. But I think we were already, when some of these moves were happening, Oklahoma, Texas, for example, everyone was like, oh, I kind of just wish we would go back to the good old days of the regional conferences. And now that we have what's going to be a Power 4, mm-hmm. I feel like there will be eventually this, I don't know how many years it will be, but I think we're going to kind of long for this wanting to have realignment again. I kind of told you this, but also a kind of a point that I left out is when we talk about attendance for even these football games, the reason why I think we have such great attendance in certain areas is because also you can travel to those rivalry matches or even just other games in mm-hmm. general. Mm-hmm. That's why watching the games that we love to watch are so important, because one, you can get there, and also regionally they make sense. I'm not going to argue with a Washington State football team because I don't have anything there with being in the Midwest. So I think that's something that's, even though we're talking about football, like alone, the attendance I think will be interesting. Sure, home games will be fine, but are we going to have away crowds like we used to? Are we going to have some of that fire between fan bases? Because it's going to take some time to build up those rivalries again. But I think the whole thing that you're talking about with those smaller sports, when we're talking about traveling, you hit it on the head. Like, we're talking about football that has the nice traveling amenities, but mm-hmm. every sport that you listed off does not have that. Like, there's multiple days having to be put into place to get there. And if I'm Maryland going from the East Coast to the West Coast, that's playing a game on a Thursday, Sunday. I maybe get home. Let's just say, hopefully they get a night flight. They get home by Sunday night late. There's a time change in there. Monday's an off day, but Monday's not really an off day because technically you have PT and you have classes, and maybe you want to get groceries at one point, somewhere in there.
Well, you need the off time.
Yeah. And then if you're going back, let's say, I mean, they're scheduling smart. You'll do USC, UCLA in the same weekend, but holy cow, USC, UCLA in the same weekend. Good luck. Yeah. So there's just a lot of things in there that, like, when you talk about traveling for a smaller program, like, this is not a football program that gets to take.
Well, it just weighs on your mental health.
Yes.
And right now I can understand how it feels like the other sports are just being forgotten about.
Yeah.
Because the NCAA is making these changes for the sake of football and football only. And they're not taking into account all the travel and things like that. You brought up another good point, too, when talking USC, UCLA. And I think it was something that Coach Rule had said, too, the other day about the conditions that teams would be playing in. Because if you go play a baseball game in the Midwest, like you could be playing in 45-degree weather. I remember covering Omaha baseball games when I worked on the video team there. And I'm like, what are we doing right now? Like, why are we playing baseball in 45-degree weather? Well, it's the same as if you're a UCLA or USC team that did you sign up? Like if you were a recruit and I went to go play baseball at USC, did I sign up to go play baseball in 45-degree weather? No, I signed up to play in warm weather. It's the same approach that Ed Service takes with Creighton baseball. The reason Creighton doesn't go play exhibition games down in Florida, down in Texas, over in California, it's because he knows his guys aren't going to be playing in those conditions throughout the season. Now you're going to have to start scheduling those games, and who knows how that could affect a player, because for me, if I could play in the same conditions all the time, it would be great. I'd be golden. But if I had to play in warm conditions and then I went back to cold, I had to revert back. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I just want to be in the warm weather again. I can't play in these cold conditions. I'm stiff. I'm thinking about other things, and boom, you're not, the goal at hand is not the same anymore.
I think also to add on to that, I kind of got this perspective from Mizzou's head football coach, Eli Drinkwitz. He said, some of the reasons why these players decide to go to a certain school, one is because they're usually from around that area and want to go somewhere close. But they also want their families to be able to watch them. However, also, I think when you have a lot of West Coast or East Coast or even Southern teams, like a lot of those kids grew up in that area. So I think, you can say kids need to rise to the occasion and they need to be competitive. And if they want to play college sports, they'll do what they need to do. But if I'm choosing to go play baseball at UCLA, it's because of the competition I think I'm going to get playing in Oregon, playing in Washington, playing your other schools like that, your USCs in that conference. And also same for like your SEC schools, I guess your Big Ten schools, like UCLA and USC. Are we doing their baseball teams disservice by bringing them in the Big Ten? By, like you said, they're not used to that climate. They chose that place for a reason. I understand it's something I have to get used to, but then also you think about beyond just your baseball team, you're thinking about your soccer teams, your tennis teams, people that they play these certain sports because of the climates they grew up in. And you want to talk about the mental health aspect, talk about, all the travel and all that stuff, but how does it feel already to kind of feel like a decision was made without you? I think that's something we're talking about how it's a football decision, but we're also talking about the mental health of when we get there, it might be hard on them. I think it's probably already a little bit frustrating to think that there was decisions made for you that you, like Coach Drinkwitz said, did we even ask them? Have we asked anyone outside of just the media rights that are making the decisions? Have we asked anyone outside the people that are paying the bills? I understand that's what has to happen, but like they're not the ones playing in the conditions. They're not the ones traveling. They're not the one doing school. They're not the one doing school on a day-to-day basis while they're trying to do all this. So I really think he brought up a good point. Like, why did we not consider asking before we make all these changes?
Avery, I'm curious. I think we all agree here on the challenges that this presents, especially to the non-football sports. Have you thought at all about, because at this point, you're not putting the genie back in the bottle, right? Like we are past that point. Is there some potential solutions that you've been thinking about that you said, okay, maybe this might work? Have you gotten to that point of it yet?
Honestly, not really. I was telling Andrew that my biggest thing to athletes now is you kind of have to, like, this is obviously for so many of them, yes, you're there to go to school, but you chose this place because of that sport. But you have to find something during school that is not your sport 24/7, because like obsessing over anything else in life is unhealthy. But then when it comes to college sports, we like try to justify it. And I felt like me as a student athlete alone, I became a better player in person, I feel like, during season when I had something else to pay attention to or to be passionate about. And so I think there has to be some way of a healthy balance for these athletes to find that, instead of knowing that they're going to have to play 2 games on a weekend if you're certain sports, or 1 game on a weekend, and then the rest of your week is travel and school. I know a lot of teams are good at this, but when they're out and about, you have to find a way to let them release and go do things, go see where they're at. Like, make it some sort of, if you're going to go East Coast, West Coast, then I would say coaches have got to find a way to incorporate something about making it entertaining. And I know some coaches are really good at that, but it's going to be really strenuous. And I think there's just got to be time for these athletes to release somehow. So I haven't really got there yet, but I know that was something that was really important for me in my mental while being an athlete. And I was only traveling to the Dakotas. So
now,
well, that can be challenging mentally for anyone.
Yeah, you're right. Grand Forks is no joke.
We gotta wrap this thing up. But when I was talking about this with Ravi too, I thought the only front end solution that could really work is sports have to work with academics in the case of, hey, you may just send me the video lesson of Monday's 8 a.m. class, because if I get back at 7:30, you can't expect me to go to class and be aware and be present physically in the class. Like, you just can't. So that's the only solution I can see right now.
I think the last point real fast is if NCAA is going to make that decision, and you have to understand these smaller sports that don't have as much money, it needs to be something that they can say, okay, there are certain programs that can't afford to have a third coach, but we will make sure that every single team that has to do this will have a paid tutor. They will have an extra, sports psychologist, because that is a mandatory thing next year. And then maybe a nutritionist. Like, those three things have to be added onto the staff somewhere if NCAA is going to make that decision. Because how are these kids supposed to take on schoolwork? I understand we have great advisors out there. Omaha had great advisors. They were a phone call away, but sometimes it's nice to have them in person. It's up to them sometimes, because you have so many schedules to bobble when you're playing a sport and stuff. So if that's the decision they're going to make, I also hope that they are taking into account having extra personnel on staff, because like we know, baseball can barely have a paid third coach. So at certain places. So I think as long as they have people in place to help these athletes, if they're going to make these changes, then that's a step forward.
Avery, we appreciate the time this morning. Thanks for just stopping over on a humbug. We are talking to Damon Benning when we come back out of the break, so stick around for that. The 9 o'clock hour awaiting on Coffee and Cream next.
Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
I'd like to be a big physical, offensive line that can do a lot of things, right? At the end of the day, we want to run the ball and stop the run, and we want to protect our quarterback and affect their quarterback. So, we need big, powerful guys up there that are smart and can handle all the looks. And our defense certainly provides a lot of challenges. They see a different defense on every play. So, they're training and they're coming along.
Top of the hour on Coffee and Cream alongside Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers. We're out at the Pinnacle Bank Championship live at the club at Indian Creek. We're happy to have you with us. 888-638-4876, the phone line, or you can, words are hard, get involved on the YouTube chat room, and we can see your comments there. Before we go any further, let's talk to our guy, Damon Benning. He joins us now on the show. DB out at high school football practice this week, which is why he is not in the chair next to me, but he's doing his thing. DB, good morning.
Hey, how are you guys?
It's good to hear from you. I can't wait till we can actually do a show again together. I'm kind of getting tired of Robbie.
Hey, you got to hang in there. Robbie's one of those guys you got to train for. It's a 12-round fight. We're almost there.
All right, call me Bud Crawford. I'll get deep into the seventh here.
Listen, I don't want to see any TKOs, so let's get this thing to a decision.
Hey, so out at West Side, how's practice going?
Man, practice is great. And I'm not just saying that. I'd shoot you straight. We are we're way ahead of where we were, a year ago at this time, which is kind of where you want to be, but it can be a little scary too, right? Sometimes we have to have a reality check. Where is this real? And it is. We've got some good players and we're pretty deep. So, we got some areas we got to clean up, got to figure out how to get off the field on third down. We got to take the ball away a little better. And, we got a hard special teams to replicate that we had a year ago. So we definitely have our challenges.
Yeah. How do you replace Tristan Alvano?
You really don't. So, one of our long snappers, Will DePuter, is down. Nebraska, he got a walk-on opportunity, and he's long snapping. And I talked to him the other day, and he said it was interesting when he first got to camp with Tristan. He was 2/3 of the other one. Marty Mormino, our punter, was the other, but it was the snapper, holder, kicker. Marty was our punter as well. So those three were always together. And I would tell them, Robbie, I'd look at their times, 1.9, 2.0, 2.1. And I would say, I'm like, you guys have no idea how good these times are. It doesn't make a lot of sense now, but it will. And he comes back the other day and he said, I couldn't believe when I was asking our long snapper, he's asking some of the guys down there, hey, what are some of your best times? And he was giving them their times. And he was like, man, we were doing that in high school. Right. And that's how it was. It was as easy as pitch and catch. And so that is, believe me, we had to change some of our protection, and we took a lot of things for granted the last couple of years. And we have some wrinkles that we have to have just to adjust for we're not quite as efficient as we were a year ago.
DB, you're 16 days out from your opening game on the 25th. where are you from where you want to be versus where you maybe thought you would be in terms of kind of being on schedule? You like where you're at, but is there anywhere that you're kind of, you mentioned getting off the field on third down, obviously some special team stuff. Where are the areas where you'd like to maybe pick up the pace a little bit where you're barely 2 weeks out?
Yeah, so I think, we're in half rack today. It was our first day with pads. So, we were in helmets the first however many days. What is today? Thursday? I don't even know.
Wednesday.
Wednesday? Yeah, so today we were half rack. It's weird, but every day seems the same, right?
Right.
So I think for us on offense, right, we bring back 2.5 starters. 5 of those guys were in our top 9 from a year ago. So offensive line, we're much more athletic. We're a little stronger, but you're going to miss guys like Peyton McDonald, big, strong interior linemen. So we're watching that closely. Our running game is a lot better. I just asked, sophomore year, John Ross was one of those guys where you're like, whoa, look out, right? He split time with Dom Rizak, and Dom had the bad toe, and the world kind of opened up for John Mez. And, last year he played at 201, 202. He currently is 181 pounds. He looks amazing.
Wow.
He's got a chance. He looks like sophomore, the guy that was highly coveted coming out of middle school, John Mez Ross. He's a nice added dimension. So we really want to be able to run the ball without utilizing our quarterback. So that's one thing we're working on, because he rushed for a little less than 700 yards last year, and we've got to be better in that area. But with our wide receiving core, you've got Teddy Rizak, Caleb Benning, Keenan Cotton, Spady, Kevon Shan. I mean, we're loaded. At the numbers, Christian Jones will play a lot of offense for us. So our passing game complementing our run game is something we've got to, can't get greedy, right? We have to have discipline to be who we need to be to play late in November. So that is a unique challenge, right? You can't fall for the fool's gold. And then defensively, like I said, we bring back 9 starters. So that helps. And we're able now to, we're messing with our fronts a little bit. We've got some coverages that we want to put in that we think will serve us well down the road. So people ask me, would you rather play a week 0 game like Prep or Bellevue West, right? We have them on 2 of those teams are on our schedule the first 3 weeks.
Right. It seems like you guys have a gauntlet.
It's tough. We're 7 of the 9 teams in our regular season last year made the playoffs, and Millard North lost in week 9. They got upset, or it would have been 8 out of 9. Right? So remember, we were the 1 seed with the 1 loss, and people were scratching their head. But our schedule is, 5. You got Millard North, Millard South, Prep, WS. That's the way it should be, right? You want to play
right
Kearney, who I think, much like basketball, will be one of the better kept secrets in the state, and we go there, right? So it's what you want. We got an experienced group back. You want to be tested, and we will. So we want to take the ball away, and now we're kind of adding. We're to the point where I think we can add some wrinkles. We can disguise some things. Christian Jones, year 2 in this program with us, is a pleasant thought. He kind of took a little bit for us to get him going last year, and it's a big boy defense, and he's comfortable now. We got a really experienced secondary. Year 2 for Rizak at the safety spot is kind of scary, right? He was thrown into it last year, and we've got, if we stay on the gas, we got a chance. Got to stay on the gas though.
DB, as we were talking this morning about fall camp too, let's transition to Nebraska. Did it surprise you yesterday to hear Coach Rule say that the one person on the staff that does it better when it comes to having guys rise to expectations is Donovan Raiola? Did that surprise you?
No. So it's his personality, right? Remember we kind of talked about guys you'd hang around and get. So here's the thing about Donnie. I'll give you an example. I don't know if I told you this when you first came back from vacay, but during our barbecue, so we had recruits in, they had recruits in, and they had the families, and we're kind of in the concourse and we're meeting. They kind of wanted to shake it up.
Mm-hmm.
So we met in a new area, and it was kind of this table setting. It was where I was getting my tail kicked at Uno, right? So the coaches had to introduce themselves and say a little bit of something about them. And, you know, you got a microphone and they're handing it around. Donnie was the only coach that didn't use the microphone. They went to hand it to him. He kind of looked at it. He's like, "Hey, I'm Donnie Raiola, Coach O-line. Give me a Ric Flair. 2 claps and a woo!" Right? So, like, and the families like responded on cue, right? But it's just his presence. He said it. It was kind of awkward. He didn't do what everybody else did, but simply because he was the one that said it, we did it almost like Simon Says, right? It was just kind of weird, but that's his presence. And remember, Coach Rule got a good sense of that early. Remember, he and Coach Satterfield kind of had those meetings early with Donnie, probably expecting to need a new O-line coach. After those first 2 meetings, they're like, this is our guy. And it was the 3rd press conference where Coach Rule said, you know, I don't really subscribe to this narrative that we're not going to be we don't have a good offensive line.
That's true.
We're going to have a good offensive line. Remember, he said that early.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we kind of wondered, like, I don't know, like, you sure? But he never wavered. And I'm telling you, the players wanted Donnie back. And I said on the show, remember, Andrew, I go, whatever they want, that's good enough for me.
Right.
Consistency in the voice. They know more than I do. Let's ride. And I'm telling you, his standard, his groups, I joke, right? They dress the same. They're always together. They talk the same. They walk the same. They're always together. And it's what he demands. His group does not mess around. Usually it's the D line between the 2 interior lines that's like that, and the O line are kind of the fun-loving, hey, let's hang out and kumbaya. Nah, they're kind of the ornery, this is how we do it group. I don't know how it'll correlate to their play, but from how they go about their business, they're locked in. They are definitely locked in.
PB, I was thinking a lot about Rule's decision to retain Donovan Raiola after kind of his comments yesterday. And it kind of occurred to me that it feels like he kind of put more pressure on himself by choosing to keep him, because it's kind of it was a scrutinized position last year. It wasn't a necessarily position coach that everybody was in love with in terms of retaining from the old staff. I kind of got to the point where I was thinking about the conviction it took from Matt Rule, because he probably understood to a certain level that he was putting himself in a more difficult position than he would have if he just hired a new O-line coach. Does that make sense?
100%. And so I told you, Coach Rule's got a couple of really good gifts. His number one gift, I think, is his discernment.
Mm-hmm.
He's very good at reading people. Right? He's very good at reading people. And I think after that first meeting, there were some things that I think he wanted in comparison to who he thought he was bringing on board. Remember, he's got Garrett McGuire, he's got Rob Dvorak, he's got Evan Cooper, is 31 years old. You're bringing in a new DC who he didn't know at that time. It ended up being Tony White. I think for his staff, follow me here, he wanted some veteran toughness, a guy that wasn't one of his guys that had the qualities that he wanted, that could model behavior for the guys that he was bringing in so they wouldn't be too comfortable. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're putting a team together, you don't want all 2 guards, you don't want all shooters, you don't want all rim runners, you don't want all ball handlers. He got a guy that complements the personality and the mental makeup of his staff. I know that's a little deep, but I swear to goodness, as I'm looking at their personalities, Donnie's kind of the one guy that's not like the others, because even for White being a new guy, he's still a cerebral assassin. So he's a lot like Coach Rule in that regard. Donnie, on the other hand, is like Coach Rule's alter ego, the guy that'll cuss you out when you really don't meet standards, but will still put his arm around you and tell you he loves you. He can't always be that guy as the CEO, but he has his right-hand henchman who's exactly like that, and he's like that all the time. For every T. Knighton that's a tough guy that'll still tell jokes, you need a Donnie Raiola who's not about that life. I think he's a really, really good compliment to how he put together the rest of that staff. It's as much his personality as it is anything else.
DB, I think you remember, too, me telling you the first thing I was listening for as we got to hear the coaches for the first time was, does Donnie Raiola sound different or sound the same as Coach Rule and the rest of them? Because that was kind of just what I wanted to look for. And, you know, he didn't sound the same. He sounded completely different. So I couldn't agree more with that alter ego. Now, as you kind of like know what's going on in this wide receiving room, I was talking to BC about this because we talk about it a lot on this show on how, you know, we were never like, oh gosh, we feel really good about this room, even though some people were on that side. Us, on the other hand, we were like, I don't really know. You hear yesterday that Betts is battling an injury right now. You're trying to figure out like who those young guys are that will step up and you know, whether they're injured or whether they're sick or whether they're just, you know, not filling the shoes or showing up, you know, making weight when they first come to fall camp. You have some outliers that need to be present, but maybe aren't. As you kind of look at everything in that wide receiving room, if Betts is injured and say, you know, the injury lasts a little bit longer, who's the guy that steps up for you? Because if you remember, we tried to paint pass 4 a couple of weeks ago, and we really couldn't find a fit that we felt overly confident about.
Okay, so Bullock will be in the mix. Alex Bullock, a guy that I like a lot. Who would I tell you of the freshman was the most game ready based on film? You remember?
Was that Bell?
It was Jaden Doss.
Yeah.
Okay. Who would I tell you was the sleeper of the bunch?
Jalen Lloyd.
Jalen Lloyd, right? So let's stick with that theme because that's where he was yesterday. Jaden Doss is a guy you don't have to babysit. He'll come to work. He was pretty polished. I think a lot of guys liked his tape, right? BC was kind of on that train too. He's like, you know, Jaden Doss looks like he's probably the closest to being able to play. The reason I said Jalen Lloyd was the sleeper, remember, Andrew, we had this whole height, weight, measurable thing. And I said, you know, Jalen Lloyd was 6. I said, if Jalen Lloyd was 6'1", we wouldn't even be having this conversation, right? Because we were talking about meeting certain measurables. And Lloyd hits them all. He's just slight. But he comes to work every day. He made the great catch when he hurt his ankle when we lost him for the state finals. He came to practice every day. He's in a boot. He's in crutches. That's just the standard, right? And we heard it again yesterday. The standard is the standard. And we, you know, Coach Samanji was like, hey, listen, even our injured guys, I want you at practice. I want you here every day to be with us unless injury prevents you from being here. He said it in the parents' meeting a week ago. It's just how he goes to work. Even though he's extremely young for his age, he's a full year behind everybody else. He comes to work every day, and he's not afraid of the moment. So that doesn't surprise me. I'm not knocking like the Malachi Colemans of the world or anybody else who isn't used to high. If you don't have rigor in high school, it is hard to follow rigor in college. It just doesn't happen. It's much more difficult. It's much more regimented, and you have to keep showing up. So I always try to tell high school coaches, listen, your best players, this isn't new, right? You want to be able to coach your best players the hardest, right? You want to be able to have them be able to take the discipline. When that happens, you have a chance to have something special. Take a look around at the high school level, even in middle school. If the best players come to practice every day and they show up every day, they participate in 7-on-7, they don't sit it out, they're not too cool, they play. Those are the guys that give themselves, it's not surefire, but you at least know you have a chance. Now, those other guys can be super uber talented, and sometimes coaches at the high school level have a tendency to babysit those guys. Hey, we need them on Friday nights, or we can't get those guys hurt. You have to be really, really lucky and have some good pieces around them, or those guys don't ever become the guy at the next level. It's almost foolproof. It doesn't matter if it's basketball, if it's baseball, if it's football, if it's track and field. If you don't bark as a pup, you don't bite as a dog. It just doesn't happen. So this is a game of attrition, and read his body language. I asked him the other day, I said, hey, do you want me to, I trust you. I know you got it handled. Do you want me to talk to Z? Nah, we got it on our end. All right, good enough. Hey, everything else good? Yep, coach, we're good. Hey, how's Jalen? We're good. Comes to work every day. We got the rest. Okay, don't want to infringe on the relationship. I got it. Just asking the question. He let you know yesterday in his delivery and his post-practice speech from the day before about 90% versus 10% and how easy it is to tap out, and that you're the worst teammate ever if you base it on what unit you're running with. That message wasn't for me. It wasn't for you guys. That's the guys he's talking to, his own guys. I'm rolling with the real ones, the ones that want to show up every day. See, that's a guy that I told you guys last week. He has this uncanny ability to push himself away from the table and walk away from the deal, but he cares. He doubled down on it yesterday. He'll push himself away from the table. Yep, I'm good. I'm full. I'm ready to move on. I love you, but the rest is up to you. I'm not babysitting. You want to go back to the care, not coddle? Mm-hmm. His message is so consistent, it's silly. And he finds different ways to say it. Hey, everybody wants to play as a freshman. Not everybody wants to come to work every day. Not everybody wants to prepare to play. When your wants are greater than your preparation, you don't even give yourself a chance. And he's good with it. He also told you, I'm not changing come game week just to win a game. I'm going with the real ones, because that's a guy that's got experience building. You wonder why he may lose a few games early on in his rebuilds? It's because he has some non-negotiables. He's not willing to compromise. He'll take it on the chin, get his culture right, get his guys in later, and then he'll let the live ammo fly. He's telling you everything you need. He wasn't at practice today. Nope, he was injured. Nope, nothing further. See, he's a terrible liar. So he's not gonna try. Yeah. He's just not going to elaborate when he's done and moved on. He let you know yesterday in a multitude of ways he's ready to move on.
Absolutely. DB, that's about all the time we have. I do think I got plenty of topic ideas for our podcast tomorrow, so thank you for that. So I'm excited to get that with you, but good luck the rest of the week in practice over at Westside there. And, I'm excited to have you back in the chair and we all get to hang out with you.
Hey, I'm excited for him to be back in the chair too. You can go kick rocks, Robbie.
Hey, listen, I'm just glad we're not week 0. Ask me again. I'll always take the tape versus the early game.
Absolutely. That's our
I don't
friend
remember
Damon
how
Benning.
I answered that question with DB when he presented it to me last time. DB, appreciate you.
Anytime.
We will change gears and go into Ravi's wheelhouse next. Creighton just concluded their trip in the Bahamas, right? All 3 games, that's
They
it?
did, yeah.
That's all 3? So we will get into that. We'll talk about the new faces on the team and, just share our overall thoughts from that trip. That's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back, guys. We tell you all the time to get Storm Chasers tickets, all the time. And I hope you got tickets to last night's game.
Oh, man.
Did you see the catch from John Raven center?
It was incredible.
That's a Sports Center top 10 play.
It should be. Absolutely. It was. He's running back on the ball, hits off of his glove, bounces off his shoulder. His glove is against the wall. It bounces off his glove again, and then he catches it with his bare hand. Incredible catch, incredible concentration, and a great reason to go out to see the Omaha Storm Chasers. They're in town the rest of the week and through Sunday, the 13th. Tonight, we had a dog running around here at Pinnacle Bank Championship.
If you found us distracted during our interview with DB, that was the reason.
I was like, he's a puppy. Go out to Werner Park tonight, and you can be like me and say, he's a puppy all night, because it is Bark in the Park night over.
Although, ask somebody to pet their dog first.
Yes, always ask
Unless
first.
It's like the stray dog that comes up to us.
Yeah, always ask first to pet the dog, but it's Bark in the Park night at the Omaha Storm Chasers, 7:05 first pitch. Get on out there tonight, and you've got the Storm Chasers here for the rest of the week as well.
Now, and the other thing about that too is people may really get overly infatuated by the catch, but that type of muscle memory and just body movements and things like that, it's not uncommon for a baseball player to pull off. And it's because you will constantly see ball players just tossing a ball in the air, one hand to the other, or like I was telling you before the show, you roll it back, you hit it off your bicep, then you hit the top of your hand, you hit your forearm, you catch it. Like that's a little muscle memory game that you do to pass the time in baseball, just because
there's a lot of downtime.
You're good at it, right?
Yeah.
And so when I watch that play happen, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like he's using what he does in the dugout just for fun, just to pass the time. And it's actually happening in front of us, in front of our eyes right now. He's using what he once learned, and now it's just a thing of muscle memory for him.
Well, because there's so many random things that can happen during a baseball game, it's kind of funny how the silly little things that baseball players do, like in the dugout or at practice or whatever, kind of come to be useful at certain points. We used to play this game. We'd call it
basketball.
We call it fungo golf. We would take fungo bats or whatever, or sometimes we would just use regular bats, and we would pick a point on the outfield fence, and we'd say, hey, you've got 3 strokes as par to get to this point. You had to hit the ball. And listen, it's a silly game that mostly the pitchers were playing to waste time while everybody else was doing real work. But, if you get in a situation, you have a better feel for the bat and bat control and where you're trying to place the ball and things like that.
And it's all about superstition in baseball. It's all about how do I even explain it? Because when I played, it was everything had to happen in order. It's all about routine.
Yeah. A lot of baseball players are very OCD.
When I'm in the outfield, you have to have 10 sunflower seeds against the left cheek. As you're just sitting there, and it's just those little points about a baseball game that keeps you from feeling like something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
And so that's why you see baseball players pick it up or play that, there's that bunt game where you toss a ball, you got to bunt it. If you field it cleanly, it's an out, or you switch roles or things like that. Call it knickknacks, whatever it is. It's just the little bits of baseball that you don't get unless you're a player.
For sure. And, it kind of goes to what you're talking about with the, you got to have certain amount of things to feel like you're in right position. I think some of it's superstition. Some of it's like there's so much repetition and everything like that. But some of it's like a control what you can control to get yourself in the right headspace. Like if you need 10 sunflower seeds in your mouth to feel like you're in the right headspace, that's an easy fix. That's a very doable thing. And why would you mess with that if it's something that gets you in the place you need to be mentally? Does it seem silly? Sure, absolutely. But if it's not that's not a hard do. That's not a hard thing to accomplish for a lot of the time. So, people look at it and be like, "Oh, baseball players are kind of silly." And let's be honest, they are. They can be for sure.
Absolutely are.
But it's with a sport of that nature where there's so much routine and there's so much inactive time, whether it's between games.
Why do you think you saw Florida at the College World Series? I think it was Florida meditating on their backs in front of the dugouts. It's because that's what they do.
Yeah.
That's what they have to do to feel like they're in the right headspace and that they won't be you're not going to tick off the baseball gods.
And they probably did it once and things went well. And so they kept doing it, right? That's how, and it just, hey, we were in a good headspace there. And maybe it starts off as like kind of a reasonable thing. And then after that, you go, hey, this is just what we do now. And that's how a lot of those traditions start. And, if it works, it's hard to blame them. And like I said, it really doesn't matter if there's science or whatever behind it or even a good reason. If it gets you in the right headspace, that's the part that matters.
Now, I want to get to this because I know you want to get to this, and I want to make sure we get to it for our audience. I've been hearing a lot of stuff with this Creighton basketball team and this new roster.
Yeah.
And one thing I've really been hearing is Shireman shooting the ball more confidently, which I didn't know was was that even possible? Could he shoot the ball more confidently after throwing up 30-footers in basketball games? And then this isn't anything new, but, the staff does a really good job of minimizing weaknesses and maximizing strengths. And I've been seeing that a lot in the young guys, in the Jason Greens of the world, watching his highlights at power forward last game. I saw it a little bit with Josiah Dotzler. Like they were talking about, hey, he'll probably redshirt. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, his defense is something to be desired. Maybe we don't have him redshirt and he comes off the bench. And then you have, the Stephen Ashworths of the world, which is, he's an interesting case for me because I could only watch the highlights. I didn't have the package to watch, the full games. But what I saw from him was a lot of movement without the ball.
Yeah.
And when he was at Utah State, it was, no, the ball's in his hands. He's going to facilitate. Not that he can't facilitate, but I think what Creighton is maximizing out of him is his movement without the ball, is opening up space on the floor, getting him the ball on the second or third pass while the play's developing. And now you have a point guard with the ball in his hands for the first time that could either find Ryan Kalkbrenner, could find the open shooter in the corner. And I just think, it's good coaching at the end of the day. And that's what Coach McDermott's all about. But overall, I think what I've been hearing from Creighton is good.
Yeah, I think Ashworth is really interesting because obviously the big departure that everyone was talking about, the most unexpected one, was Ryan Nembhard from last year's team to this year's. And obviously Ryan Nembhard's a really talented guy. But it's possible that Stephen Ashworth is a better fit for what Creighton wants to do for the rest of the roster as well, especially now that you have Trey Alexander and Baylor Shireman.
And he looks good. Trey looks really good right now.
Those are two guys that are better with the ball in their hands. And when you had Ryan Nembhard, who was a very ball dominant point guard, that's just his style. And Creighton did their best to work within that style. It kind of took away from, I think, the ceiling of Baylor Shireman and of Trey Alexander. Now, all of a sudden, you've got a point guard in Stephen Ashworth who is almost as good off the ball as he is on the ball. And it opens things up for you in a way that now Trey Alexander can have more time on ball and be a little bit more ball dominant. And not just do I think that's better for the team, but it's also better for his pro prospects, maybe showing that he can be a primary ball handler a little bit. Baylor Shireman is a great passer, takes some chances that maybe you don't feel great about sometimes, but you take the good with the bad there. But really good vision, really good passer, and was the primary point guard before he came to Creighton. So allowing him to have the ball in his hands a little bit more, it's honestly just harder to defend when you've got three guys that can consistently make plays for themselves or others instead of knowing, hey, everything's probably going to come out of a high ball screen for Ryan Nembhard, or everything's going to come from Ryan Nembhard in transition, or whatever the case may have been the last couple of years, it's way harder to defend. It's harder to get your chemistry right at first on the front end, but on the back end, so much harder to defend. If you look at what I believe was the best Creighton team of my lifetime, which was the 2020 team that ended up winning the Big East regular season title before the season got canceled.
Right.
You had Marcus Zagorowski, Tyshawn Alexander, Mitch Balak as three guys that were shot creators for themselves and for others, that were good passers. You could trust all of them with the ball in their hands. I think they're getting close to replicating that type of system here. And if these guys can gel, you're going to be in really, really good shape. That was my biggest takeaway from the Bahamas.
Great points. That is the 3-game sort of like series, Creighton down in the Bahamas.
A little vacation.
Yeah, a little vacation. Why not? I would
vacation with a little basketball sprinkled in.
And you know what? When you're winning all 3 games too, it's a good vacation.
Why not?
All right, we'll take a short break. When we come back, a new game, but it's gone in 60 seconds. The new game within Gone in 60 Seconds. We will play that next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. The time it took you to get the time it Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. The time it took you to get your popcorn? 3.2 minutes. The time it took you to upload this podcast? 2.5 minutes. Time Damon has to go rapid fire?
Let's go.
60 seconds.
Oh, it's rapid fire.
It's gone in 60 seconds with Coffee and Cream. But on Hail Varsity Radio.
Top tier open on the show. Gone in 60 seconds. DB will not be playing today. So Robbie and I are going to do a split here. And the reason for that is there's a new idea to the game. So it's Gone in 60 seconds presented by Dingman's Collision Center. Dingman's your one-stop shop for all your car needs. Dingman's has some pretty fantastic give back programs as well that they support. And you know, the coolest part about the whole thing is that you get to choose who Dingman's donates to. Like, I don't know another company that like really operates that way, but that's the Dingman's way. And one of the programs in particular that you can give back to is Epic for Girls, which focuses on leveling the playing field for girls of color in sports. It serves as the umbrella organization to amplify sports programming, call attention to issues of inequity in sports, and addresses incidences of violence occurring in the world of youth sports in Omaha. It's all sports too. It's not just limited to just one. It's basketball, volleyball, soccer, dance, softball, gymnastics, you name it. Epic for Girls is there to support it. Show Dingman some love. And if you have a problem with your car or need an oil change or just anything, go to Dingman's Collision Center. Okay, Robbie, here is the game. So we are going to give the colleges of the skill position guys on current NFL teams. So that's the quarterback, the running backs, 2 wide receivers, and tight ends. We'll have 60 seconds to do show. So I'm telling you, words have been difficult today.
To do show today.
So I'm going to keep time on my phone. Normally we have Shane back in the studio showing us the time, but this is just in order to keep us honest. So would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
Why don't you go first? Why don't you show me the way?
Okay. So are you going to give?
I can read them off for you.
Okay.
I'll give one of my teams first.
So I'm going to hit start right when you start talking about the teams, because by the time you're done, 15, 20-ish seconds should have passed.
Yeah.
You should have 40 seconds to be able to name an NFL team.
All right. You ready?
Ready? Go.
QB, Alabama. Running back, Penn State. Wide receiver, LSU. Wide receiver, LSU. Tight end, South Carolina.
Alabama quarterbacks are Mac Jones. Who's the running back now in Carolina? Who just got there? Miles Sanders. It's Carolina.
It is Carolina. Well done, sir.
All right. That took me 30 seconds.
Well done.
Okay. So there you go. Now that the game's kind of warmed up.
All right.
Wide receiver, LSU. Who are the wide receivers in Carolina?
Terrence Marshall and DJ Clark. And then Hayden Hurst.
Terrence Marshall.
Hayden Hurst is the tight end.
Okay. All right. There we go. All right. You ready for yours?
As ready as I'll ever be.
All right. Shane, music again, please. And go. Quarterback, Eastern Illinois. Running back,
Raiders.
I was trying to
Jimmy
throw you
Garoppolo,
off.
baby.
See, you can basically name this off just for the Raiders. All right, let me go again.
All right.
Let me go again. Okay. I wanted to throw Shane a bone there with his Raiders. Okay. Here we go. Ready, Shane? I'm going to trick you here.
Okay.
Quarterback, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Running back, Nebraska Kearney. Wide receiver 1, Texas A&M. Wide receiver 2, Penn State. Tight end, Washington.
Okay, so Oklahoma, we've got Kyler Murray. We've got, I think I'm gonna go Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield.
Locking it in?
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm starting to notice a trend here. The trend is when you recognize the quarterback,
Yes.
you can easily narrow down the school.
Yeah. So that was my philosophy. So here's what I did is with the teams that I picked, I made sure that every one of them had multiple quarterbacks that were playing in the NFL.
That is correct.
So I wanted to make it a little bit tricky on you because the easiest way is be like, okay, I know where that quarterback went to school.
Give me one more.
Okay.
And after this, if I get it too soon, we are going to take out the quarterback position.
Oh, that's tricky. I'm not going to get any.
And then when you have, let's just say 15 seconds left, we'll throw the quarterback in.
That's
if
like,
we need it.
okay, that's the lifeline.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Here we go. Quarterback, Cal. Running back, Iowa State. Wide receiver,
This
Cal.
is the Jets.
It is not the Jets. Wide receiver,
Come on.
USC. Tight end, Iowa.
Cal, Iowa State.
Cal for wide receiver, USC for wide receiver, Iowa for tight end. There's only one more Cal quarterback that's
I
the
know.
starter.
But I'm trying to think. Who did you say was the running back?
Iowa State.
Oh, so you're saying David Montgomery. That's what confused me.
Okay.
Because when you go Cal, you can go Rogers, and you can go Iowa State, which is Breece Hall.
That's why I did this one.
Okay, so you went Montgomery over Gibbs, so it is the Detroit Lions.
It
Okay.
is the Detroit Lions.
Okay, so this seems pretty easy. Now let's go without the quarterback.
Oof.
We're going to make this a little bit more difficult.
This is going to be a lot harder.
You ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, let's start this thing off. Go ahead, Shane. Running back, Purdue. Wide receiver, West Alabama. Wide receiver, Alabama. Tight end, Notre Dame.
Oh.
So there's a big clue in there with the obscure school.
Yeah, I don't have it though. So who was the running back? Alabama?
Purdue.
Oh, Purdue. Oh God. Oh man. Alabama and West Alabama were the wide
That is
receivers. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think of who has an Alabama wide receiver right now, like half the league.
10 seconds. I'm going to throw in Alabama as the quarterback.
Alabama. I'm going to go New England.
It is not New England. It is the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, that's right.
So running back, Raheem Mostert went to Purdue.
That's right. I should have known that. He was a Niner.
And
I should have known.
Tyreek Hill is the West Alabama boy.
I totally spaced that. He was from West Alabama.
Mhm.
That was just gone from my brain. I think Tyreek Hill. I think Chiefs. That's the only place I read.
Okay, you throw me one.
All right. This is
I'm ready.
No QBs.
No QBs.
All right. Here
Oh,
we
wait,
go.
hold on. I got to get the time. I'm ready.
All right.
Go.
Running back, Virginia Tech. Wide receiver, Maryland. Wide receiver, Notre Dame. Tight end, Notre Dame.
Running back, Virginia Tech, you said?
Yep.
Maryland, wide receiver. Okay, next one.
Notre Dame wide receiver and Notre Dame tight end.
There has to be more than Diggs that came out of Maryland.
There is. It is not Diggs.
Wide receiver, Notre Dame. Where's Will Fuller playing?
Not Will Fuller.
Jeez.
How much time do you have left?
10 seconds.
All right. Quarterback, Ohio State. It's not Houston.
Okay, don't tell me though.
You're going to kick yourself.
The Bears.
It is the Bears. It is your Chicago
Why would I
Bears.
think you would not choose the Bears the whole time?
It is your Chicago Bears.
Yeah, that would
DJ Moore is the Maryland.
Oh.
That was great. That was probably the best one.
Oh yeah, Shane, you can shut it.
Claypool
so
was the
last
Notre
night.
Dame
Last
receiver.
night I was putting together the list, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to do the Niners because he'd expect that, and he'd probably expect I'd do the Bears. So they weren't even on my brain.
Literally the only reason I did the Bears was because there's multiple Ohio State starters. And I was like, you know what? I want multiple starters for quarterback was my criteria for choosing.
All right, let me do one more with you.
All right.
One more. We'll try to fit in one more each if we can, but I got one more here. All right. We don't need music, Shane. We're good. I know we're running close to time.
90 seconds.
I'm going to start the clock here. Ready, Robbie?
Okay.
Texas A&M is the quarterback. Running back is Alabama. Wide receiver 1, Clemson. Wide receiver 2, Arkansas. Tight end, Maryland.
Oh, that's the Titans.
That a boy.
I was like, there's only one Texas A&M starter. That is our guy Ryan Tannehill.
All right. Nice work, man. Nice work.
Tannehill.
So yeah, I think the way to go there is to start with the RBs.
Yes.
And then
The
work back to the
quarterbacks-
quarterbacks.
the
'Cause that's
quarterbacks
the
are a
giveaway.
giveaway,
That is
yeah.
the giveaway. All
That
right.
is the
You get one in 30 seconds?
No, but what I can do is tell you about Dyer Law in 30 seconds, Shane. Dyer Law is the place to go if you have a personal injury claim. If you are hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. 402-393-7529 or visit dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals. That'll do it for today's show. For Ravi Lulla, Sasha Durkin, who's out here producing remote, Shane, who's doing his thing back at the studio. I'm Andrew Rogers. Thanks for joining us. Coffee and Cream again, coming your way tomorrow.